Chapter 15. Chu Luiwei only ended the day's training when the sun set. She didn't even need to look to know that her body was covered in bruises. However, she felt very carefree. Not only could she fully utilize the medicinal effects, but she could also rapidly improve her physical fitness. It was also beneficial for her future cultivation. When Chu Ning returned, he immediately saw the plum blossom piles and other things in the courtyard. At the side, a skinny girl was removing the sandbags from her hands and feet. Even though the sky was already dark, he could still see that she was in a sorry state. Chu Ning's heart instantly ached. Chu Luiwei looked up and smiled at him. Father! Words of comfort and persuasion were at the tip of his tongue, but he suddenly couldn't say them. Chu Ning knew that after the previous incident, Yu had indeed been greatly affected and changed completely. It was obvious that she was working hard to become stronger. The only thing he could do was to support and protect her to the best of his ability. The medicine you brewed yesterday seems to be very useful. Chu Ning walked over and helped her wipe her sweat. Even though he tried his best to restrain himself, he still couldn't hide his excitement and curiosity. Chu Luiwei was pleasantly surprised. Really? Chu Ning nodded and didn't tell her what happened in the shop. He only said that he suddenly felt much better than before. It seems like Yu really has the talent to become a celestial physician. Chu Ning sighed with emotion. If he had discovered this earlier, Yu wouldn't have had to suffer so much all these years. Chu Luiwei smiled and winked. It's good that it's useful. As for this talent, it's not too late to discover it now. Chu Ning thought that she was comforting him and nodded. Yes, you recuperate well during this period of time. After some time, we'll find you a good master. Chu Luiwei smiled but didn't say anything. Master? Even if all the celestial physician in country Yaochen were added up, they might not be enough to be her master. Oh yes, your birthday is coming soon. When the time comes, what do you plan to do about your marriage agreement with the Crown Prince? Chu Ning asked hesitantly. Previously, because the father and daughter were in dire straits and his daughter still had some fantasies about the Crown Prince, he did not mention this matter. Now that everything had started anew, it was time to consider this question. After all, there was less than a month left. Chu Luiwei smiled coldly. Let's wait and see. She was not the one who panicked first. That night, Shui appeared as usual, but there was a bump on her head. Chu Luiwei asked, and Shui lowered its head, feeling wronged. Was it easy? Clearly, its master had agreed for it to come, but in the end, it was beaten. When it came yesterday, it did not know that it would see Chu Luiwei taking off her clothes. This was infuriating. Chu Luiwei looked at him for a while. The injury wasn't serious, so she didn't pay it any mind. She let him lie on the bed while she began to adjust her breathing. She only fell into a deep sleep in the latter half of the night. After Chu Luiwei fell asleep, Shui opened her eyes and moved closer to Chu Luiwei, allowing her gentle power to overflow and envelop Chu Luiwei. The disputes in the Chu family were quickly forgotten by everyone. This was because there was a new commotion in the imperial city. The seventh prince, Rong Xiu, had returned from Mingyue Tianshan. Although he was dressed lightly and kept a low profile, His Majesty's imperial edict immediately made His Highness the seventh prince the focus of everyone's discussion. The seventh prince, Rong Xiu, had been away for a long time. Now that he had finally returned, the emperor was overjoyed and directly gave him the title of princely. He was given the princely mansion. If one thought about it carefully, they would be able to sense the multiple meanings behind this imperial edict. Firstly, this proved that the seventh prince would stay in the imperial city from now on. Secondly, this showed that the emperor valued and liked the seventh prince very much. One had to know that the emperor had 9 princes. 3 of them had died young, and 6 were left. Other than the eldest son, Rong Jin, who was made the crown prince the moment he was born, among the remaining 8 princes, only the 5th prince, Rong Qi, who was born from the same mother as the crown prince, was conferred the title of Prince Ping. From this, one could tell how big of a commotion Rong Xiu's title of princely would cause. Originally, no one had much of an impression of him and didn't pay much attention to the return of the frail 7th prince. However, now that he was conferred the title of princely as soon as he returned to the imperial city, it really made people overthink. Almost overnight, the princely mansion became a bustling place. Many people sent in invitations to see the princely, but the princely mansion rejected them all, claiming that the princely was tired from traveling and needed to rest. Chu Luiwen naturally didn't know about these undercurrents. What she cared about the most now was her own health. Zhenbao Pavilion was indeed reliable, and the second batch of herbs was delivered on time. Chu Luiwen wasn't in a hurry to deal with these things. Instead, she chose to go out that day. This time, she didn't go out directly from the main door. Instead, she disguised herself as a young man, wearing a black robe and a bamboo hat, and flipped out from near the small door. The imperial city was bustling. Even on the streets, there was no lack of people in all sorts of strange outfits. Thus, Chu Luiwen didn't attract much attention. After leaving the Chu family, she headed west, heading straight for the Ghost Street in the western part of the city. Although it was called Ghost Street, it was actually a place where all kinds of people gathered to buy and sell things. There were crooks mixed in with the honest folk. There were all kinds of things for sale, and the prices were different. It was unknown how much money one could spend on what they could buy. Because of this, there were some people who liked to come here. Occasionally, if they were lucky, they could find some treasures. Chu Luiwen came here today with this mentality. Ghost Street was very lively. There were all kinds of stalls on both sides of the street. Chu Luiwen walked very leisurely. She seemed to be looking around carelessly, but her eyes were quickly sweeping over those things. Time passed bit by bit. After walking through half of Ghost Street, Chu Luiwen didn't find anything that caught her eye. She couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Just as she was considering whether to go back or not, she suddenly caught a glimpse of something on a shabby stall. Her heart skipped a beat, and she walked over without batting an eyelid. It was a stone about the size of a fist. It was grayish-white in color, and there was green moss growing on it. It looked like a stone that was randomly picked up from somewhere. However, if one looked carefully, they would see two faint red streaks on the stone. That proved that there was an extremely precious red jade hidden in this stone. Just as Chu Luiwen was about to ask for the price, someone was one step ahead of her and picked up the stone. It was a man who looked to be about 20 years old. He had a fat head and big ears. He wore a brocade robe, and his whole body exuded the aura of a nouveau riche. Hey, I didn't expect my luck to be so good today. I can even find such a red stone. Old man, name a price. The owner of the stall was an old man. His hair and beard were all white. It was the middle of summer, but he was wearing a shabby cotton-padded coat. He was holding a palm leaf fan and gently fanning himself as he lazily reclined there. Hearing this voice, he opened one eye and then stretched out a finger. 800 taels? The old man shook his head. 10,000 taels. The young man suddenly exploded, and his fat body trembled. You're crazy. Giving you 100 taels for a piece of red stone is already giving you face. You even dare to extort me. Do you know who I am? Let me tell you, I am the cousin of the future crown princess. Hearing this, Chu Luiwen, who had been watching coldly from the side, finally raised her eyebrows slightly. Chapter 16. Why don't you ask around about the Lu family's fourth young master? Chu Luiwen suddenly understood. So, he was Chu Xinmin's cousin. Things haven't even started, and he's already related to her. Birds of a feather flock together, the old man snorted. Who cares who you are? 10,000 taels, not a penny less. If you can't afford it, someone else will. Lu Jitao was so angry that he laughed. He weighed the red stone in his hand and said arrogantly, "Oh, I'd like to see who will buy this." As he spoke, he looked around warningly. The people who were interested in the red stones stopped in their tracks. Not everyone could afford to offend the Lu family's fourth young master. A red stone of this size would only cost 2,000 taels at most. No one would spend 10,000 taels. Moreover, he purposely revealed his identity. Whoever bought it would be going against him. Previously, people had heard that the crown prince liked Chu Xianmin. In the past 2 days, there were even rumors that the crown prince's personal guard, Song Yuan, had personally sent the invitation to the Crown Prince's birthday banquet to Chu Xianmin. It seemed like the future Crown Princess would definitely belong to Chu Xianmin. Offending the Lu family was equivalent to offending the Crown Prince. The surroundings were silent. Lu Jitao said proudly, "Old man, I know this. Old man, I advise you to know your place. Other than me, no one else will buy this thing, 10,000 taels. I'll take it." A cold and clear voice suddenly sounded. At the same time, a fair hand suddenly reached out from the side and took the red stone away. Lu Jitao did not expect that someone would dare to snatch what he wanted. He was stunned for a while before he reacted. He took a closer look and saw that the other party was wearing a black robe and a bamboo hat. It seemed to be a young woman. Lu Jitao was furious. "For you, did he eat a bear's heart and leopard's guts? How dare you snatch something that this young master has his eyes on?" The old man was also shocked. He finally opened his other eye and carefully looked at Chu Liwei. Really? The red stone was indeed of high quality, but it wasn't worth 10,000 taels. He was short of money recently and didn't want to sell it to Lu Jitao, so he casually offered 10,000 taels. He didn't expect that someone would actually buy it. Chu Liwei took out a banknote worth 10,000 taels and handed it to the old man. The old man was a little hesitant at first, but when he saw the banknote, his eyes lit up and he immediately took it. He was really poor recently. The highest bidder wins. Don't you understand this principle? Besides, this crimson rock is worth at least 1,000 taels of silver. You want to buy it for 100 taels of silver? How can there be such a bargain in this world? As Chu Liwei spoke, she chuckled. Or could it be that the Lu clan's fortune was obtained through such means? Lu Jitao was so angry that his face turned red. He was scolding the Lu family as well. Without a second thought, he unsheathed the long sword at his waist and thrust it at Chu Liwei. This young master will do whatever he wants. Who are you to lecture him? You're courting death. The old man who had just received the banknote opened his eyes slightly and clenched his fist lightly. Just as he was about to move, he stopped in surprise and looked at Chu Liwei. She moved her feet lightly and turned her body. Somehow, she avoided Lu Jitao's sword. Lu Jitao's humiliation turned into anger when he missed his attack. He attacked Chu Liwei again. This time, Chu Liwei didn't retreat. Instead, she took a step forward and strangely bypassed his sword. She lifted her leg and kicked Lu Jitao's elbow. His arm went numb and his long sword fell. The next moment he felt a chill on his neck. Chu Liwei had already picked up the sword and placed it on his shoulder. If he moved, his head might be separated from his body in the next moment. When the old man saw this, his gaze turned from surprise to curiosity. He carefully sized up Chu Liwei. This girl clearly didn't have any force fluctuations on her body. Logically speaking, she shouldn't be a match for Lu Jitao. And those few moves just now were simple and neat. Every move was fatal. If she wanted to, Lu Jitao's life and death would be in her hands. How interesting. Lu Jitao broke out in a cold sweat and stuttered when he spoke. What are you trying to do? Yuder. Chu Liwei increased her strength and Lu Jitao's neck immediately started bleeding. Noisy. Lu Jitao was so frightened that his face changed. He swallowed the rest of his words back into his stomach. He could tell that the other party was really daring and dared to do anything. Although his cultivation talent wasn't very good, the Lu family had spent a lot of money on him over the years. In any case, he had broken through to a third-stage warrior. Warriors of this level didn't have abundant force and could only master some simple martial arts techniques. But whether it was their physical strength or fighting skills, it was not something an ordinary person could compare to. The other party was obviously not a warrior, but she defeated him easily. Get lost. Chu Liwei shouted. Only then did Lu Jitao stand up trembling and retreat until he was more than 10 steps away. Finally, he forced himself to shout, "You! Just you wait, just you wait." After saying that, he immediately turned and ran away without waiting for Chu Liwei to speak. Chu Liwei didn't take him seriously at all. She threw the sword down and turned to leave. Buying that red stone today was already a pleasant surprise. There was no point in staying here any longer. Moreover, Lu Jitao must have gone back to get reinforcements. She didn't want to expose her identity so quickly. The people who were surrounding Chu Luiyue saw that she was about to leave and subconsciously made a path for her. Although they couldn't see the person's figure or appearance, there was an inexplicable pressure on her that made people submit subconsciously. Hey, wait. Seeing this, the old man immediately reacted. He hurriedly packed up his stall and was about to chase after Chu Luiyue. However, when he looked up, he realized that Chu Luiyue was no longer in sight. He was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but shake his head and scold with a smile, "What a vigilant girl." However, it was too naive to think that she could get rid of him like this. Chu Luiyue quickly sensed that someone was following her, so she quickly changed her route and walked through several streets. Not only did she not go to the Chu family, but she also went further and further away. Finally, she entered a remote and narrow dead end. After entering, the surroundings were quiet. She then turned around. "You've been following me all this way. Why don't you just say what you want to say?" After a moment, a hunched old figure appeared at the entrance of the alley. Chapter 17. He rubbed his hands in embarrassment. "Hee, little girl, don't be angry. This old man didn't follow you on purpose. I just feel that the 10,000 taels is too much for my conscience. Although I'm short of money, I can't go against my conscience and bully a little girl like you, right?" Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. "If you're here for this, there's really no need. In my eyes, that red stone is indeed worth 10,000 taels." Not only was it worth it was super worth it. But the old man didn't believe her at all. He waved the fan in his hand. "Hey, little girl, don't be so polite. This old man has seen at least 90,000 if not 100,000 red stones. It's really not worth 10,000 taels. How about this? I'll give you something else as compensation. How about it?" Chu Luiyue shook her head. "Not interested." The old man's face fell. "This little girl is too difficult to deal with. Why are you here? It's better to be straightforward." The old man looked at Chu Luiyue's indifferent expression. Her bright black eyes seemed to have seen through everything. He couldn't help but feel even more embarrassed. "Actually, I just want to ask you a question. Who is your master?" Although there was no fluctuation of force on her body and those few movements were very simple, he could tell at a glance that it definitely originated from one or more profound martial arts techniques. There must be a top-notch expert behind her. Otherwise, she would definitely not be able to suppress a Stage 3 warrior like Lu Jitao so easily. These years, his life had been very boring. If he could exchange pointers with her, that would be great. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. "If I tell you what's in it for me?" The old man scratched his head in distress. He didn't have much money on him, and the other party didn't seem to be short of money either. After thinking for a long time, he finally patted his head and took out a jade pendant. "How about this in exchange? It's still worth some money." Chu Luiyue lowered her head to take a look. Her eyes flashed slightly. It was actually a jade pendant carved with a mystic talisman. And it seemed that the grade of the mystic talisman wasn't low. The value of this thing was definitely not low. He actually gave it away so casually? Really? Of course. Seeing that Chu Luiyue seemed to be somewhat moved, the old man hurriedly took a few steps forward and stuffed the jade pendant into her hand. "Anyway, this old man doesn't really need it. If you like it, you can take it." Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment, then simply accepted the item. Since he dared to give it to her, she naturally dared to accept it. "All right, then I'll tell you the truth. I don't have a master," said Chu Luiyue straightforwardly. The old man's excited and expectant expression instantly froze. "What? No master? How is this possible? Don't tell me you learned all your martial arts on your own." Chu Luiyue coughed. She really couldn't explain this. "I really don't have a master." Of course, the old man didn't believe him. He grabbed Chu Luiyue's wrist. "Lass, if you don't tell the truth," halfway through his words, he suddenly paused and looked at Chu Luiyue with shock in his eyes. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly and tried to break free. "You're that lass from the Chu family?" Chu Luiyue was stunned. He didn't see her face, but he actually recognized her. But she didn't have any impression of such a person. Seeing that she didn't speak, The old man was even more incredulous. You're really Chu Luiyue? Isn't your Yuan meridian? So he recognized her by taking her pulse. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief and simply took off her bamboo hat. I'm indeed Chu Luiyue. You are? Seeing the beautiful face in front of him, the old man was stunned for a moment. So you're already so old? That's not right, your Yuan meridian. Halfway through his words, he suddenly paused. For a moment, he really didn't know what to say. When Chu Luiyue was young, he did take her pulse and repeatedly confirmed that her Yuan meridian was naturally incomplete and would never be able to cultivate in this lifetime. But just now, when he inadvertently felt her pulse, he discovered that there seemed to be a subtle change in her Yuan meridian. Chu Luiyue looked at the old man's fluctuating expression and narrowed her eyes. She had only just begun to repair her Yuan meridian. Normal people wouldn't be able to detect it. But this old man immediately recognized it. It was clear that he wasn't an ordinary person. It was very likely that he was a celestial physician. At the very least, he was an extremely powerful expert. Lass, tell this old man the truth. Who exactly is helping you? The old man's previously idle appearance was replaced by a much more serious expression. He let go of Chu Luiyue's hand and carefully stared into her eyes. Chu Luiyue sincerely shook her head. There really isn't anyone. If you don't believe me, you can personally ask around. Although I'm the first miss of the Chu family in name, I've been living worse than a servant all these years. I'm already lucky to be able to keep my life. What else can I do? The old man was skeptical. He hadn't paid attention to worldly affairs for many years and didn't understand many things in the capital. But Chu Luiyue was born a good-for-nothing. It wasn't difficult to guess what kind of life she had been living all these years. If someone was helping her from behind, she and Chu Ning didn't have any backing. Who could they find? Lass, what you say makes sense. But your Yuan meridian is really hard to explain. The old man racked his brains but still couldn't figure out the reason for the sudden change in Chu Luiyue's Yuan meridian. He couldn't help but knock his head with a fan. Chu Luiyue glanced at the sky. If you don't have any other matters, this junior will take her leave. Although she couldn't confirm this old man's identity, Chu Luiyue was certain that his background wasn't simple. She naturally wouldn't offend such a person. The old man casually waved his hand. His brows were still tightly knitted as he pondered over the problem. What exactly is? Chu Luiyue didn't stay any longer and quickly left. In the narrow alley, only the old man was left in deep thought. When Chu Luiyue returned to the Chu residence, everything was normal. The new herbs had been sent over. As usual, she brewed Chu Ning's medicine first and sent it over when Chu Ning returned. Chu Ning didn't say anything and drank all the medicine. His initial doubts had long been dispelled with the obvious improvement in his health. Now, in his eyes, his daughter was an out-and-out genius. Feeling a warm energy surging through his limbs, Chu Ning sighed softly. When Daddy recovers, I'll bring you to become a disciple. Your talent can't be buried. Chu Luiyue asked casually. Daddy, how many celestial physicians are there in country Yaochen now? Chu Ning pondered for a moment. The requirements to become a celestial physician are very stringent. Even if some people have a little talent, they can't become a true celestial physician. Now, there are only 7 celestial physicians in the entire country Yaochen. Chu Luiyue asked some indirect questions, but unfortunately, Chu Ning didn't know much about them, so he couldn't match up with the strange old man in the end. Chu Luiyue also knew that this matter couldn't be rushed, so he didn't ask any more questions. After Chu Ning left, he continued to brew his own herbs. That night, Shui didn't come. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. When Chu Luiyue started brewing medicine for Chu Ning again, an uninvited guest came. It was that old man. Obviously, he didn't come in from the main entrance. He was still wearing the same tattered cotton-padded clothes, and there were a few leaves on his head. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he looked like he hadn't slept for a few days. Chu Luiyue was surprised to see him like this. Why are you here? The old man had a sad look in his eyes. I thought about it for 3 days and 3 nights, but I still couldn't figure it out. I didn't expect. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Did this mean that he hadn't slept for a few days because of her? He stretched out his trembling hand and pointed at the pot of fragrant herbs. He complained bitterly as if he had been deceived. Chapter 18. After listening to the old man's tearful complaints, Chu Luiyue realized that after she left that day, he had been wondering how she had started to heal her Yuan meridian. However, he couldn't figure it out even after 3 days of thinking. In the end, he had no choice but to make a trip to the Chu estate to take a look for himself. He almost fainted from anger when he saw what was inside. The entire courtyard was filled with the rich smell of medicinal herbs. He could tell that it wasn't simple with a single sniff. It was impossible for an ordinary person to perfectly blend so many medicinal herbs together. Even if it was him, it would be difficult for him to achieve this step. This girl actually said that no one helped her. Was she seeing a ghost? Chu Luiyue helplessly face-bombed when she saw the old man's, "You big liar," expression. Most people wouldn't know what she was doing with these herbs, but this old man was different. He would definitely be able to tell something. Chu Luiyue couldn't be bothered to hide it and shrugged. "If you don't believe me, then so be it." With that, she continued to open the jade box and process the herbs. The old man was stunned. Seeing that Chu Luiyue had no intention of explaining, he immediately farted in a fit of pique. He sat on a rock nearby. "Girl, if you don't give this old man an explanation, I won't leave." Chu Luiyue nodded perfunctorily. "Oh, all right. There's water in the house. If you're thirsty, you can drink it yourself." Look at this attitude. The old man was so angry that he waved the fan in his hand, causing his beard to flutter. This time, he really went against Chu Luiyue. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was really ignoring him, the old man snorted and casually looked around the courtyard. The Chu clan was one of the 4 great clans in the capital. Although they were ranked at the bottom, they still had some foundation. However, this courtyard was remote and shabby. It was no different from a poor family's. No matter who saw it, no one would believe that the once glorious Chu Ning and his only daughter were living here. These two were the direct descendants of the Chu clan. To think that they would end up in such a state, the old man sighed in his heart, and his anger gradually dissipated. Then he looked at the plum blossom piles in the courtyard. They looked like they had just been set up. Was this used by Chu Luiyue for training? Wasn't it too simple and crude? This father and daughter pair were living too miserably. A unique bitter and sour smell suddenly drifted over. The old man sniffled and watched as Chu Luiyue took out a black withered vine the length of a small arm from the jade box and placed it into the boiling pot. "Hey, why did you add in the withered wall vine? This thing would melt when it came into contact with boiling water. At that time, its effectiveness will be greatly reduced." The old man quickly rushed to Chu Luiyue's side and spoke in an exasperated tone. "Aya, you silly girl. The withered wall vine was extremely valuable." Just like that, his words came to an abrupt halt. The withered wall vine, which should have melted quickly, was now lying in the pot. Steam rose from the boiling water and hot air rushed over, but the withered wall vine was still intact. Gradually, an ink-like liquid flowed out from the withered wall vine and dyed the air. The bitter and sour smell became fragrant and sweet. This was the smell of the withered wall vine when its effectiveness was completely extracted. The old man widened his eyes and looked at the scene in disbelief. How is this possible? The withered wall vine had an extremely strong healing effect. In addition, it grew on cliffs and only grew an inch every 10 years, so it was very precious. However, such a rare herb was also very troublesome to process. Because it was extremely thin and brittle, once it was damaged, its efficacy would quickly dissipate. It could only be slowly steamed in water. If the water temperature was too high or too low, it would affect the efficacy of the herb. Especially boiling water, once it came into contact with it, it would quickly turn into slag. But now, the withered wall vine not only did not melt in the boiling water, but it was also stimulated to its strongest effect. How did you do it? The old man looked at Chu Luiyue in confusion. Chu Luiyue pointed. "Take a closer look." The old man rubbed his eyes and leaned closer. Finally, he saw that the withered wall vine seemed to be covered with a layer of silver-white ice crystals. Silver ice grass? This was an extremely common herb. Because it was silver white and had a cold attribute, it was usually used to relieve pain. Grind the silver ice grass into powder and add it to the boiling water 15 minutes in advance. When the withered wall vine is added to the boiling water, it will quickly condense on the withered wall vine. In this way, the withered wall vine will not melt. Chu Luiwei explained. Everything had its weakness. Although the silver ice grass was common, it was extremely useful in this situation. The old man was stunned for a while before he suddenly slapped his thigh. That's right. Why didn't I think of it? Chu Luiwei smiled faintly. This was actually not a secret. Celestial physicians' understanding and application of the medicinal properties of herbs were different. Where did you learn this method? The old man finally reacted and looked at Chu Luiwei with sparkling eyes. Chu Luiwei scooped out the withered wall vine. The medicinal properties had already taken effect. It was best to remove the remaining residue as soon as possible. I figured it out myself. The old man naturally did not believe it. However, after asking for a long time, Chu Luiwei did not explain anything. He could not help but feel annoyed. However, his eyes did not leave the pot of medicinal herbs that was boiling in the water. Chu Luiwei did not hide it and openly allowed the old man to look at it. This medicine was brewed for Chu Ning. The prescription was very common and there was nothing wrong with showing it to him. This was because the technique and control of the medicine was more important. Some people did not have the talent. Even if they memorized the prescription and tried diligently, they would still not be able to become a celestial physician. The courtyard quietened down. The old man watched Chu Luiwei brew the medicine from the side and his expression gradually changed. Chu Luiwei's series of actions flowed smoothly. The timing and dosage of each herb could be said to be perfect. The medicinal fragrance became stronger and stronger, indicating that the medicinal properties were fusing together. Without tens of thousands of practice, it was absolutely impossible to achieve this. Even he would not be able to do it better than Chu Luiwei. Clack. The jade box was closed and the last herb was put in. From start to finish, not counting the herbs that Chu Luiwei had already put in before he came, she had put in at least 35 different herbs. Moreover, this was clearly not the limit of Chu Luiwei's standard. She was definitely at the level of a celestial physician. No matter who she learned her skills from, he was certain of one thing. Chu Luiwei was extremely talented on the path of a celestial physician. What was wrong with the Chu family? Not only did they not cherish such a rare celestial physician genius, they even dared to bully and humiliate her? Looking at this dilapidated courtyard, it was simply ironic. He rubbed his hands and looked at Chu Luiwei as if he was looking at a peerless treasure. Lass you, this old man will not ask you about those things. I only have one thing that I need your help with. I want to come here and watch you refine medicine in the future. Do you think that's okay? Chu Luiwei shook her head. She had too many things to do. It would be inconvenient to have another person around. I'll come here once every 3 days? Chu Luiwei still shook her head. 5 days? Half a month. If you don't agree, then 1 month. Okay. Half a month. Just half a month. The old man was afraid that she would go back on her words. He nodded his head repeatedly and his face was already full of smiles. Chu Luiwei suddenly tilted her head and asked thoughtfully. Chapter 19. The old man was stumped by the question and scratched his head in distress. This was indeed a problem. He had snuck in today, but he couldn't possibly do this every time in the future, right? Although the Chu family's defenses were of no use to him, since he had decided to learn something from Chu Luiwei, he naturally couldn't be so casual. Besides, there were many rules and regulations in the celestial physician profession. One had to know that many celestial physicians placed great importance on their own methods and processes of refining medicine. Unless they were teaching their personal disciples, they rarely allowed outsiders to observe them. Chu Luiwei had already promised to visit him once every half a month, which was already very generous. As for this identity, how about, I become your disciple? The old man said excitedly, but he immediately frowned and looked hesitant. But this old man had a master before. Although he has already passed away, it's a little difficult for me to acknowledge someone else as my master. Chu Luiyue looked at him speechlessly. This suggestion was also very difficult for her, all right? She also didn't want to accept such an old disciple, all right. How about this? How about you be my master? Chu Luiyue suggested. The old man was shocked and hurriedly waved his fan. That won't do. This old man wants to learn from you. How can I become your master? He could tell that Chu Luiyue's standards were not inferior to others. He wasn't qualified to be her master. Chu Luiyue's eyes curved into crescents. Why are you being so polite? This junior is inexperienced and doesn't know many things. Of course, I need a good master to teach me a thing or two. Could it be that you don't want to accept me as your disciple? What are you saying? How could there be anyone in this world who doesn't want to accept you as their disciple? But, as the old man spoke, he suddenly realized something, and his eyes widened in shock. Wait, you're saying that you still don't have a master? Chu Luiyue blinked sincerely. That's right. Didn't I tell you from the beginning? The old man looked at her suspiciously. He didn't dare to believe it in his heart. In the end, he could only guess that there must be a top master behind Chu Luiyue, but he couldn't show himself for various reasons, so he said that. You want me to be your master? Chu Luiyue nodded. Chu Ning might have believed her earlier words, but if it were anyone else, they would definitely be filled with doubts. She needed a master as a reason for her sudden change. In the future, if anyone asked, she just had to say that she had been secretly taught by a master and had been biding her time. The old man was silent for a long time. He was not stupid. He knew exactly what Chu Luiyue was planning. Being able to have such thoughts and methods was enough to prove that she was absolutely not as useless as the outside world said. On the contrary, she had top-notch talent and outstanding intelligence. A 14-year-old girl like her? God knows how many secrets she is hiding. Once she agrees, she will definitely be involved in a lot of trouble. Chu Luiyue did not rush him. She looked calm. The old man's expression changed. His eyes moved back and forth between Chu Luiyue's face and the medicine soup. He had already made up his mind to not get involved in these messy matters, but he really wanted to see Chu Luiyue refine medicine. All right, I promise you. The old man gritted his teeth and finally made up his mind. From now on, I will secretly watch you refine medicine. On the surface, I will be your master. Chu Luiyue was not surprised by this answer. Hearing this, her eyebrows relaxed. Then she crossed her hands and bent her knees slightly. Disciple Chu Luiyue greets master. She actually performed a formal apprenticeship ceremony. The old man was stunned. Looking at Chu Luiyue's still somewhat young face, he couldn't suppress the joy in his heart. This was his first disciple. In the past, he always felt that taking in disciples was troublesome. He didn't expect that by chance, he would take in such a genius disciple. He suddenly felt much closer to Chu Luiyue in his heart. He hurriedly let Chu Luiyue stand up. We, master and disciple, don't care about those formalities. If you have any problems in the future, just ask me. Chu Luiyue smiled with curved eyebrows. Thank you, master. Hearing the crisp master, the old man's heart was filled with tenderness. My surname is Yi. If you want to find me in the future, go directly to the Autumn Wind Garden in the west of the city. Chu Luiyue quickly searched her mind, but did not find anyone surnamed Yi, let alone the Autumn Wind Garden. But this was normal. She had been trapped in the Chu family for many years and did not know much about the outside world. Now was not the time to ask these questions. She simply did not dwell on it. When it was time to find out in the future, she would naturally know. After that, Master Yi and Chu Luiyue talked for a long time about refining medicine. It was not until sunset that they reluctantly left. Of course, Chu Ning knew nothing about all this. Chu Luiyue also pretended that nothing had happened and quietly nursed his body. More than 20 days passed quickly. Early in the morning, Zhen Bao Pavilion sent the last batch of herbs over. After Chu Luiyue counted the herbs, he began to methodically refine the medicine. Unlike before, Chu Ning was also at home this time. From time to time, he would look at Chu Liyue's room, feeling proud and nervous. After enduring for a few hours, Chu Liyue finally stopped and scooped out the medicine soup. "Father, this is the last time. After drinking it, you can try to cultivate again." Chu Liyue brought over the medicinal soup that she had brewed. Chu Ning quickly went forward to take it, looking somewhat excited. During this period of time, his body had obviously improved. Not only did his crippled leg become as strong as before, even his perception of force seemed to be much stronger than before. He even faintly felt that he seemed to be even better than when he was at his peak. After being defeated for so many years, it was impossible to say that he did not want to make a comeback. He did not expect that the one who gave him this hope was actually his own daughter. Chu Ning drank it without hesitation. The blazing energy flowed down and then gathered in his dantung. He crossed his legs and crossed his arms in front of him. He closed his eyes and began to guide this energy. The surrounding force of heaven and earth seemed to be guided by something and began to gather towards Chu Ning. This was the sign of a breakthrough. Chu Liyue curled his lips in satisfaction. Chu Ning's talent was indeed not bad. It was an unexpected surprise that he could take this opportunity to attempt a breakthrough. She quietly left and returned to her room. After this period of recuperation, the Yuan meridian in her body had almost recovered. She only needed one last step to completely recover. She began the last batch of medicine refinement. When the medicine soup was finished, the sky was completely dark. She took off her clothes and entered the bathtub. The rich medicinal fragrance lingered. White mist rose, almost obscuring her figure. She held her breath and concentrated, sinking her qi into her dantian. Strands of energy entered Chu Liyue's limbs and bones. The Yuan meridian that was originally damaged and withered had now become lustrous and supple. Under the nourishment of the abundant energy, the Yuan meridian continued to expand and grow. At the same time, the small lake in Chu Liyue's dantian started to ripple again. A faint red water droplet floated up from the middle of the lake. Then, it transformed into countless tiny particles that could not be seen and merged into Chu Liyue's Yuan meridian. Buzz! Chapter 20. Chu Liyue's body trembled. At that moment, she felt a terrifying pressure from ancient times that made her soul tremble. She didn't have time to be shocked. Instead, she felt a burning sensation in her body. The water droplet dispersed into millions of particles and landed on her Yuan meridian. It was like sparks falling and instantly igniting a huge fire. Her entire body felt like it was wrapped in a blazing flame. Chu Liyue's heart trembled violently. She subconsciously curled up her body, clenched her fists, and gritted her teeth. Her mouth and nose were filled with the thick smell of blood. At that moment, it was as if she had returned to that nightmarish day. The pain was even more painful than that time. Chu Liyue's body turned red. Her face was flushed with blood, and her entire body was like a piece of burning coal. She kept sweating all over, but before it could drip down, it was evaporated by her blazing body. At that moment, she almost subconsciously felt a sense of despair. Betrayal. Burning. But in the next moment, she fiercely bit the tip of her tongue. The sharp pain woke her up. She desperately told herself that she wasn't in the ancestral hall of the Tianling dynasty. This wasn't the night she died. If she wanted revenge, she had to get through it. At this moment, every second was incomparably torturous. At the same time, Chu Liyue's damaged Yuan meridian was finally connected. After an unknown period of time, the intense pain finally disappeared. Chu Liyue slowly opened her eyes and saw that the originally clear medicinal soup in the bathtub had become much murkier. She immediately checked her Yuan meridian. She couldn't help but gasp. Daijing Yuan meridian? The damaged Yuan meridian had been completely repaired. Its entire body was lustrous and clear with a faint red color. She never expected that this body's Yuan meridian would reach the level of a Daijing Yuan meridian after it was repaired. Even in the entire history of the Tianling dynasty, there were only 2 people with Tianjing Yuan meridian. Although the Daijing Yuan meridian was 1 level lower, it was still considered a rare existence. This body was born with a damaged Yuan meridian. She thought that after she recovered, it would be good enough if she could reach the mystic meridian Yuan meridian. This was a huge surprise. In this way, her future cultivation would be twice the result with half the effort. Chu Luiwei quickly changed the hot water for a fresh bath. The Yuan meridian reconstruction seemed to have forced out some of the impurities in her body, making her feel much lighter. After tidying everything up, Chu Luiwei sat cross-legged on the bed and tried to absorb the heaven and earth origin force around him. As expected, he successfully condensed the origin force in his dantian and transformed it into his own power. Chu Luiwei felt the strands of energy flowing through his body, and the familiar feeling made him feel much more at ease. From now on, she can once again embark on the path of cultivation. However, she still had a question in her heart. What exactly was the lake formed by the transparent pages in his dantian? It seemed that the water droplet had caused a slight change in her Yuan meridian. Also, at that moment, she felt a vast and terrifying pressure. What exactly was it? Tock tock tock. There was a sudden knock on the door. Are you awake? It was Chu Ning's voice. Chu Luiwei took a look and realized that a night had passed. She took a deep breath and walked over to open the door. Chu Ning was standing at the door, and the dispirited and depressed look on his face had changed to one of high spirits. Today, it was obvious that he was a completely different person from before. Chu Luiwei tilted her head and smiled. Father has broken through? Chu Ning was stunned and immediately ruffled her hair. I really can't hide anything from you. 10 years ago, when he was just one step away from becoming a rank 5 warrior, he suffered a serious injury and did not make any progress. Because of his physical disability, he could not even use half of the power of a rank 4 warrior. He did not expect that 10 years later, he could actually recover and even break through to become a rank 5 warrior. One must know that in the entire Chu family, only the patriarch and 2 elders had reached this level of strength. I said before, Father will definitely be better than before. Chu Ning's talent was not bad, and after careful recuperation, it was normal for him to break through to rank 5. She had a sweet smile on her face, but there was no surprise in her eyes. Chu Ning pondered for a moment and guessed that she might have thought of this long ago. Chu Ning carefully sized her up and suddenly realized something, and his eyes widened in shock. Your Yuan meridian? He actually felt the fluctuations of origin power from her body. Chu Luiwei blinked. Father, what day is it today? Chu Ning's expression changed. August 8th. The day after tomorrow is Yu's coming-of-age ceremony. It was also the day of her engagement with the Crown Prince. Until now, the Crown Prince had not said anything, and it was obvious that he did not prepare for the engagement. Chu Ning thought that Chu Luiwei felt wronged and hurriedly said, Don't worry, Father will go to the palace to meet His Majesty today and request to cancel your engagement with the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince is not a good match for you, so this is considered a relief. He was now a rank 5 warrior and could speak to His Majesty. However, Chu Luiwei chuckled. Cancel my engagement with the Crown Prince and let Chu Xianmin reap what she sowed? Isn't that letting the 2 of them off too easily? She had yet to settle the score with them for all the grievances that she had suffered all these years. Chu Ning was a little confused. What do you plan to do? Chu Luiwei said softly. Or has her own plans. I have my own plans. Outside the imperial city, there was a continuous mountain range. Under the sunlight, the lush forest was mottled with light and shadow. A grand birthday banquet was being held at the foot of a mountain somewhere. Precious white jade tables were placed on both sides, and all kinds of delicacies and nectar were placed on them. More than half of the imperial city's aristocratic families with extraordinary status were here. They toasted each other, and it was very lively. However, from time to time, their gazes would shift to the seat of honor. There was a purple gold jade chair there, and a young man in a purple-red brocade robe was smiling as he listened to the conversations of the people at the banquet. It was the Crown Prince, Rong Jin. Chu Xianmin sat on his right side, looking quiet and beautiful. To be placed in this position meant that the Crown Prince had the intention of making her the Crown Princess. The Crown Prince is really in a good mood. He chose to hold his birthday banquet in such a beautiful place. It's indeed extraordinary. Oh brother, you don't know this. The scenery is nice, but more importantly, this mountain is the Crown Prince's hunting ground. The Crown Prince values this hunting ground very much, and he rarely opens it to the public. Today, we can finally broaden our horizons. Really? Once this was said, the crowd couldn't help but look at the Crown Prince. Rongjin smiled and nodded. That's right. Whoever can tame the fiend can take it away. Hearing this, the crowd gasped in unison. The Crown Prince is so generous. Someone couldn't help but tease. The Crown Prince is so generous. I'm afraid it's not for us but to make the beauty smile, right? If I remember correctly, third Chu Missy doesn't have a fiend yet. Chu Xinmin's cheeks flushed red as she looked at Rongjin shyly. Rongjin smiled and drank a cup of wine. If you're not as skilled as others, how can you blame Minmin for snatching your fiend? The crowd laughed in support. Some of the aristocratic family's daughters were naturally angry and jealous, but they knew that they didn't stand a chance after seeing the situation, so they could only bear with it secretly. Rongjin waved his hand. Chapter 21. At Rongjin's command, Song Yuan, who was standing behind him, clapped his hands and signaled his subordinates to inform the hunting ground. Everyone revealed a faint look of excitement. Rumor had it that the Crown Prince had been taking care of the hunting ground for many years. The types and levels of the fiends inside were definitely not something an ordinary hunting ground could compare to. If they were lucky, they might even be able to contract a rare fiend. Chu Xinmin's hands were crossed in front of her abdomen. Her posture was very dignified and elegant, but her eyes flashed with uncontrollable excitement. She did not expect the Crown Prince to go this far for her. He had actually prepared such a big gift for her on his birthday. Even though she had not gone in to take a look, she knew how much the Crown Prince valued the hunting ground. The fiends inside would definitely not disappoint. Even though the Chu family had their own hunting ground, they did not have any good fiends. She did not like them at all. She was originally very talented. If she could contract a good fiend, it would undoubtedly be icing on the cake. Minmin, it all depends on your ability whether you can get the biggest prize this time. Rongjin moved closer and smiled. Chu Xianmin nodded shyly. I know Brother Jin's good intentions. I'll do my best. Rongjin laughed. He liked Chu Xinmin's intelligence. She knew what to say and what to do at the right time. Seeing that he was in a good mood, Chu Xinmin's heart skipped a beat. Then, the smile on her face faded. She looked troubled and said softly, "It's a pity. Sister can't come this time." Rongjin's expression froze and became cold. The surrounding people naturally heard this and immediately looked over. Interesting. The sister that Chu Xianmin mentioned was none other than the Chu family's eldest Missy, Chu Liwei. Everyone knew that she was engaged to the Crown Prince. However, the Crown Prince did not like her because she was born useless. The Crown Prince had not invited her to his birthday banquet for many years. If Chu Xianmin did not bring it up, who would remember her? Rongjin's tone was cold. She's slow-witted. She'll only spoil everyone's mood if she comes. Chu Xianmin seemed to have just realized that her words were inappropriate and hurriedly apologized. Brother Jin, don't be angry. I was just thinking that sister doesn't have much to do at home. That's why I thought it would be a good thing if she could come out and have some fun. Nothing to do? What could a good-for-nothing do? Everyone secretly exchanged glances with a hint of mockery. The Crown Prince was too unlucky. Out of so many noble ladies, he just had to pick a good-for-nothing as his fiancée. How shameful! Minmin, you're worrying too much. Brother Jin and sister's engagement ceremony is just around the corner. Sister is too busy to care about these things. Chu Xianmin lowered her voice even more, and she lowered her head slightly. Her voice was filled with hidden grievance and bitterness. Minmin is not qualified to say these things, Rongjin sneered in his heart. Previously, when Song Yuan returned, he had already explained to him in detail what had happened that day. Chu Liwei actually dared to dream of an engagement? What a dream! Tonight, There would be a banquet specially prepared for him in the palace. At that time, he would naturally explain this matter to his imperial father and make a clean break with that trash. Thinking of this, he said indifferently, "What's the point of mentioning those irrelevant people? Nobody can say for sure what will happen in the future. You just have to do your job well." Chu Xianmin was elated. The crown prince meant that he would not have anything to do with Chu Luiyue. Previously, when Chu Luiyue calmly mentioned the engagement, she thought that the crown prince really had some thoughts about Chu Luiyue. Now, it seemed like Chu Luiyue was just putting on an act. Sensing the envious gazes of many people around her, Chu Xianmin nodded obediently. She lowered her eyes slightly to hide the smugness in her eyes. Naturally, the people around her were smart and immediately spoke up when they saw the situation. His Highness is so generous today. We can't miss this opportunity. That's right. I won't go easy on you guys later. Come on. I haven't sparred in a while. I'll find you guys later. The crowd laughed and teased, and it was very lively. Rongjin smiled and said, All right. Looking at the time, they should have released the little ones by now. It's a good time to enter the mountain now. As he spoke, he took the lead and walked forward. Chu Xianmin followed behind him. The crowd also fought to catch up, afraid of being left behind. After passing through a forest, the crowd's eyes suddenly opened up. They saw a tall and steep mountain standing tall. The lush forest made the entire mountain appear green, and the wind blew past, causing the pine trees to sway. At the foot of the mountain, there was an extremely tall black iron fence. There were people guarding it at every set distance. These guards were also very strong and seemed to be very capable. The crowd could not help but be secretly surprised. Just the maintenance of this hunting ground was probably not a small sum of money. In the entire imperial capital, there were probably not many people who could do such a thing. Since the crown prince valued this place so much, there must be some high-grade fiends inside. However, Song Yuan, who was following behind Rongjin, felt his heart skip a beat when he saw this scene. There were clearly not so many people when he was taking care of this hunting ground previously. The page boy that was sent previously was currently standing in front of the hunting ground and arguing loudly with the guard in charge of guarding it. Who exactly are you people? How dare you secretly occupy the crown prince's hunting ground? You must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. How many lives do you have to offend the crown prince? However, the guard's expression did not change. You said that this is the crown prince's hunting ground. Do you have evidence? The page boy was so angry that he laughed. Everyone in the imperial city knows that this is the crown prince's territory. Why are you pretending to be confused? I'm telling you that the crown prince will be here soon. If you still don't, what's going on? Why are you arguing? Song Yuan saw that the situation was amiss and quickly walked over to scold him. The page boy immediately turned around and saw that Song Yuan was already behind him. The crown prince and his people were behind him too. He immediately panicked. If he did not complete the task that the crown prince gave him well, he might even lose his life. Others might not know, but the people who served in the East Palace knew this person's temper the best. He hurriedly knelt on the ground. Sir, we don't know where these people came from, but they have occupied the hunting ground and are not allowing anyone to enter. Song Yuan was shocked. Someone actually dares to mess with the crown prince? Are they tired of living? He looked at the two people and angrily shouted, Are you crazy? Are you crazy? No, who are you? They are clearly not our people. He suddenly thought of something and quickly looked at the other guards in the distance. As expected, they were all unfamiliar faces. Song Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air. Someone actually forcefully occupied our hunting ground right under our noses? But why was there no news at all? Whose people are you? How dare you occupy the crown prince's hunting ground? This angry roar was very loud, and Rongjin and the rest behind heard it clearly. Instantly, there was dead silence. The smile on Rongjin's face gradually froze. What's going on? When the two guards saw him, they cupped their fists and bowed, but their words were not polite at all. Greetings, Your Highness. Our master said that we thank you for taking care of this hunting ground all these years. We won't let you down in the future. Rong Jin almost suspected that he had heard wrongly. This is my hunting ground. When did the master change? Why don't I know about it? One of the guards looked up and asked. Chapter 22. Rong Jin froze on the spot. After a while, he finally realized what the guard meant. His usually expressionless face revealed a rare look of disbelief. Is he asking me for the title deed? Just as he was about to scold the guard, a blurry memory suddenly flashed across his mind. I really don't have the hunting grounds title deed. Even though father gave it to me, it was actually a betrothal gift to Chu Luiyue. The title deed is with Chu Luiyue. Your Highness, the hunting ground belongs to whoever's name is written on the title deed, right? If I'm not wrong, this hunting ground never belonged to you, right? Even though the guard looked ordinary, he was neither servile nor overbearing in front of the crown prince. He even sounded a little stubborn. Rong Jin instantly felt his chest turn upside down. It was as if a ball of cotton was stuck in his chest, and he felt extremely aggrieved and embarrassed. This was because he could not refute the other party's words. The crowd behind Rong Jin was also stunned when they saw the situation. What's going on? How did the crown prince's hunting ground become someone else's for no reason? They even dared to ask the crown prince for the title deed. Where did these people come from? Someone else suddenly recalled an old incident from a few years ago. If he remembered correctly, the title deed should be with Chu Luiyue. However, she was just a good-for-nothing. How could she find so many people to go against the crown prince? Some people silently looked at Chu Xianmin. Chu Xianmin was also stunned for a while. It was only when all sorts of gazes landed on her, intentionally or unintentionally, that she suddenly remembered that Chu Luiyue was involved in this. Rong Jin clenched his fists in his sleeves and tried his best to suppress the anger in his heart. He coldly asked, "Did Chu Luiyue send you here?" The guard shook his head. "We have nothing to do with Big Chu Missy." Rong Jin sneered in his heart. Nothing to do with her? He's already calling her Big Chu Missy. How many people in the imperial city would call that good for nothing that way? He would never believe that Chu Luiyue was not behind this. Do you mean that this hunting ground belongs to you now? The guard respectfully said, "It belongs to our master." "How dare you?" Song Yuan took a step forward with a fierce expression. "This is a hunting ground bestowed by His Majesty. His Highness the Crown Prince has carefully maintained it for many years. How did it become your master's property in the blink of an eye? I think you guys are just looking for a beating." As he spoke, he circulated the force in his body, turned his palm into a fist, and fiercely smashed it towards one of them. Dragon Tiger Fist. Song Yuan was only 27 or 28 years old, but he had already broken through to become a stage 4 warrior. This punch was wrapped in a vigorous force, and the force was tyrannical. Vaguely, the wind from the punch was like a tiger's roar. At this moment, one of the guards stepped forward and threw out a punch with a calm expression. He had actually chosen to fight head-on. Bang! A dull thud rang out in the quiet forest. The powerful force caused the leaves that were piled up on the ground to fly up with a whoosh. Song Yuan originally didn't care about the other party at all, but the moment he collided with the other party's fist, he felt a tyrannical force rushing towards him. He even faintly felt that the other party's strength seemed to be even stronger than his. Sure enough, in the next moment, his body retreated uncontrollably. Thud, thud, thud. He was actually forced to take 3 steps back. He finally stabilized his body with much difficulty. Just as he wanted to curse, he felt a surge in his chest, and his mouth was suddenly filled with the thick smell of blood. Song Yuan forcefully suppressed his anger and swallowed the blood with much difficulty. At that moment, the air seemed to have frozen. The two of them exchanged blows. Song Yuan was forced to retreat, but the guard was as steady as a rock. Looking at Song Yuan's pale face, anyone could tell that he wasn't the other party's match. He was a stage 4 warrior. How could he be defeated so easily? Rong Jin's face was as gloomy as water. First, the hunting ground was snatched away in front of so many people. Then his personal guard was taught a lesson. He had lost all his face. That guard took a step back and politely cupped his hands toward Rong Jin. Your Highness, Master has ordered us to guard the hunting ground properly, so we didn't dare to slack off. Please forgive us, Your Highness. It sounded like he was asking for forgiveness, but in actual fact he was tearing off the crown prince's face and ruthlessly trampling on it. In the entire country Yaochen, other than the current emperor, the crown prince had the highest status. Even if he didn't have the title deed, how many people would dare to do so? Rong Jin solemnly asked. Who exactly is your master? The guard lowered his head slightly. We're from Zhenbao Pavilion. The Chu family. Chu Luiwei glanced at the sky and finally stopped his training. He then took off the sandbags on his hands and feet and softly muttered, It's almost time. It's about time. Indeed, after a while, hurried footsteps could be heard. It was First Elder's page boy. His face was filled with undisguised schadenfreude. Chu Luiwei, First Elder wants to see you. When he came, he saw how terrible First Elder's expression was. This time, Chu Luiwei was definitely in big trouble. Chu Luiwei lightly glanced at him. Who were you calling just now? The page boy inexplicably shuddered and couldn't help but think of Chu Lianxing. He heard that he was directly chopped up by Chu Luiwei because he spoke rudely to Chu Luiwei. He actually almost forgot that the current Chu Luiwei was no longer the same as before. The arrogance he had when he came inexplicably disappeared, and the page boy's voice also became a little guilty. Why, Missy, First Elder wants to see you. Only then did Chu Luiwei walk over leisurely. If you don't know how to call people, you don't have to use your tongue. Do you understand? Chu Luiwei spoke slowly, but it made the page boy suddenly panic and hurriedly nod. Chu Luiwei then followed him to the front hall unhurriedly. The place she lived in was very remote, and it would take a long time to walk there. The page boy gradually became anxious, but he didn't dare to rush her. He could only hold it in. After a long time, Chu Luiwei asked seemingly unintentionally, Who's here? It's Tai. The page boy answered instinctively and only realized that it was inappropriate when he opened his mouth. However, the invisible pressure from Chu Luiwei's body made him have no choice but to speak obediently. It's the crown prince's men. Chu Luiwei didn't say anything, but he sneered in his heart. Even at this point, Rong Jin still refused to show himself. It was obvious that he hadn't suffered enough losses. The Chu family's front hall. First Elder and a middle-aged man sat opposite each other. Chu Xianmin sat beside First Elder. The man had a square face and ordinary looks. There was a half-inch-long scar on his cheek, which made him look ferocious. He sat there boldly and didn't say anything, but it made First Elder, who was sitting opposite him, feel uneasy. This was the Crown Prince's confidant. His arrival was already worrying, and what he said just now, this Chu Luiwei was too bold. Missy is here. The few people in the front hall looked up together and saw Chu Luiwei walk in. First Elder finally couldn't hold it in. He slammed the table and angrily reprimanded. Chapter 23. Chu Luiwei looked at him nonchalantly and half-smiled. First Elder, why do you like to make people kneel so much? Do you really think that everyone's knees are as soft as yours? First Elder's anger was stuck in his chest, and his face turned red. Chu Luiwei was really arrogant. He dared to do it again and again. He used such a tone to talk to him again and again. Chu Xianmin, who was at the side, immediately went forward to support First Elder and persuaded him. First Elder, don't be angry. It's not good for your health. Sister? She might have done it because she couldn't think straight. Sister, you should quickly apologize to First Elder and Lord Zhao. She looked at Chu Luiwei anxiously and worriedly as if she was really thinking for her. Minmin, you don't have to speak up for her. This vile creature was a heartless thing to begin with. Otherwise, she wouldn't have done such a despicable thing. First Elder was furious and scolded her angrily. Chu Luiwei's eyes were cold as she raised her brows and asked, First Elder, if I'm an evil creature, then what is everyone in the Chu family? Don't forget that I'm the eldest daughter of the Chu family's first wife. What's more, I'd like to hear what I've done to make Grand Elder so angry. In their bones, the same blood flowed through their veins. Wouldn't such humiliation implicate the entire Chu clan? First Elder was at a loss for words and trembled in anger. You still have the cheek to say that? You actually sold the Crown Prince's hunting ground to Zhenbao Pavilion without permission. Now, half of the Imperial City knows about it. The hunting ground that the Crown Prince sent people to take care of for many years became someone else's overnight. They even directly rejected the Crown Prince and his people at the door on the day of the Crown Prince's birthday banquet. This was a huge loss of face. This concerned the Crown Prince's reputation, so no one dared to say anything on the surface. However, this matter had secretly spread to all the aristocratic families in the Imperial City as if it had grown wings. If one thought carefully, many people would remember that the hunting ground was given to Chu Luiyue by the Emperor. Now that the hunting ground had become Zhenbao Pavilion's property, it naturally had something to do with Chu Luiyue. Now, the Chu family had become the laughingstock of the entire imperial capital. Chu Luiyue thought to himself, Zhenbao Pavilion really has a strong background. They can actually make the Crown Prince suffer. Ordinary people simply could not withstand the Crown Prince's power. Even if they had the title deed, they would not be able to gain any advantage in front of the Crown Prince. Zhenbao Pavilion was clearly not a place that Rong Jin dared to provoke. If there was a chance, he could investigate in secret. Chu Luiyue thought so in his heart, but the expression on his face did not change. That hunting ground is mine to begin with. Don't tell me that I have to depend on others for how I want to deal with it. She said it so confidently, as if she didn't think there was anything wrong with it. The First Elder was stunned as well. Zhao Chen furrowed his brows. First Miss Chu, are you saying that you were the one who sold the title deed? Initially, he had thought that Chu Luiyue was brainless and had been tricked into giving away the title deed. But now, it seemed like he had done it on purpose. Chu Luiyue nodded calmly. So what? Zhao Chen suddenly stood up and stared at Chu Luiyue with his sharp and fierce eyes. An invisible pressure immediately enveloped the entire room. First Miss Chu's name is indeed written on the title deed, but you might have forgotten one thing. This hunting ground is a betrothal gift that His Majesty bestowed upon you. Logically speaking, only when you become the Crown Prince consort will this hunting ground truly belong to you. The current you has no right to deal with it on your own. Chu Luiyue tilted her head. Officer Zhao, you seem to have forgotten something as well. In another 2 days, it will be my 14th birthday, which is also the day of my engagement with the Crown Prince. I'll be the Crown Princess soon. What's wrong with selling a hunting ground? Could it be that the Crown Prince has no intention of getting engaged to me? Her expression was innocent, and her eyes were filled with confusion as if everything was natural. Zhao Chen was instantly speechless, and his heart was filled with anger. Is this Chu Luiyue crazy? She's just a good-for-nothing, yet she wants to become the Crown Princess? When Chu Xianmin heard the words, Crown Princess, she was furious. She really won't cry until she sees the coffin. The Crown Prince hasn't said anything yet she's still dreaming. She looked at Zhao Chen's gloomy face and softly said, Don't worry. She softly said, Officer Zhao, sister is in the wrong in this matter, but who are you to judge whether I'm in the right or not? Chu Luiyue interrupted her. Chu Xianmin looked aggrieved, and tears quickly welled up in her eyes. She said pitifully, It seems like sister is still angry with me? But sister, brother Jean and I are really not like what you think. If you sell the hunting ground in a fit of pique because of a misunderstanding, then it's really my fault. Her words seemed to be defending Chu Luiyue, but it only made people hate Chu Luiyue more and think that she was a short-sighted and narrow-minded person. Chu Luiyue smiled as if she didn't mean it. What did I misunderstand? I'm the one who has an engagement with the Crown Prince. What's there to misunderstand? Don't tell me you can steal my engagement? Chu Xinmin's face turned pale. Looking at it now, she really didn't have any right. Chu Luiyue was so arrogant because of the engagement. She lowered her head in grievance and didn't say anything else. Zhao Chen sneered. I didn't expect First Miss Chu to be so powerful. Everyone knew that the Crown Prince liked Chu Xianmin, but Chu Luiyue still used the engagement as an excuse. Let's see if she still has any face after His Highness cancels the engagement. Since first Miss Chu doesn't want the title deed back, then please explain it to His Majesty and the Crown Prince yourself. As he spoke, he looked at First Elder and cupped his hands. First Elder, please bring First Miss Chu to the palace to meet His Majesty for tonight's banquet. That's good too, you can discuss the engagement with the Crown Prince. The last sentence was filled with undisguised sarcasm. First Elder hurriedly said, "Don't worry, Officer Zhao." Zhao Chun turned and left after he finished speaking. When he walked past Chu Luiyue, he purposely paused for a moment. "First Miss Chu, take care of yourself." His murderous aura was directed at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue's expression didn't change as she curved her lips into a faint smile. "I'll return the same words to the Crown Prince." Zhao Chun met her gaze, and he immediately felt a biting cold pressure coming from her. His heart trembled subconsciously, and he subconsciously retracted his aura. He snorted, clenched his fists, turned, and strode away. First Elder glared fiercely at Chu Luiyue. "Let's see if you still dare to be so presumptuous after tonight's banquet." Chu Luiyue shrugged. "We still don't know who will have the last laugh." She then turned and left. First Elder cursed. "Evil creature." A smile quickly flashed across Chu Xinmin's eyes. After tonight, the Chu family and the Crown Prince would no longer tolerate Chu Luiyue. Princely Mansion. The eunuch who delivered the invitation waited respectfully outside the study with his back slightly bent. He was covered in sweat from the heat of summer, but he didn't dare to move and show disrespect. Although the person inside had just returned to the capital, his title of princely was enough to prove that he held a high place in the emperor's heart. The door opened. A young guard in a green robe walked out. He knew that this person was Prince Li's personal guard, Yan Qing. He immediately greeted him respectfully. "Greetings, Lord Yan Qing. Will Prince Li be attending the Crown Prince's birthday banquet tonight?" This Prince Li had been back for almost a month and had never come out. He probably wouldn't come this time either. "Of course, I'll be going." A young man's voice came from the study with a faint smile. It was low and clear like jade hitting each other. Chapter 24. Ming Chui Palace. The lights were dazzling, and the lights and shadows intertwined. All the important people in the imperial city were gathered here. This was Crown Prince Rong Jin's birthday banquet. Rong Jin was the eldest son of the first wife and was made the Crown Prince the moment he was born. He was deeply loved by the emperor. In addition, he was talented and capable, so the emperor thought highly of him. With such a respectable status, many people naturally tried to curry favor with him. As long as one could gain the Crown Prince's favor, power and status would be at their fingertips. Everyone entered one after another, and the entire hall became increasingly lively. As the emperor, the empress, and the Crown Prince had yet to arrive, the crowd was not so reserved. However, amidst the laughter and chatter, there was also a strange atmosphere. Many people looked at the entrance as if they were waiting for someone to arrive. "Hey, have you heard? The Crown Prince was humiliated today." "What? There's such a thing? Why don't I know about it?" "Brother Yen, this matter has already spread, and you still don't know?" Today, the Crown Prince said he was going to the hunting ground. The crowd whispered to each other, and their faces were filled with excitement and gossip. They were obviously discussing this matter. After all, Rong Jin had invited many people over, and all of them had extraordinary statuses. It was impossible to seal the news even if they wanted to. One spread to two to three, and now everyone knew. Isn't that person from the Chu family a good-for-nothing? Why is she so bold to sell the hunting ground? Everyone knows that the Crown Prince values the hunting ground and has spent a lot of effort on it all these years. She actually sold it just like that? Hey, what can a good-for-nothing know? She probably wants to attract the Crown Prince's attention. Ah, she's too stupid. If she took the initiative to return it to the Crown Prince, the Crown Prince might take pity on her. But now, she has completely offended the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince has long hated this marriage agreement. I think there will be a good show today. Just as the crowd was discussing excitedly, an announcement was heard outside the hall. Chu family's first elder, Chu Xiao, has arrived. The hall instantly quietened down, and everyone immediately looked over. A group of people walked in. The person in front was the Chu family's first elder, Chu Xiao. Behind him was Chu Yan and his wife, as well as Chu Xianmin. Chu Xianmin was wearing a long, snow-white dress with pink lotus flowers embroidered on it. It complemented her already pretty face and made her look even more lovely. Her appearance, when placed in the entire imperial city, could be considered to be at the top. In addition to her outstanding talent, she was given the title of Imperial City's #1 beauty. As soon as she appeared, everyone's eyes lit up. However, no one dared to reveal an infatuated expression. This was someone that the Crown Prince had taken a fancy to. Who would dare compete with the Crown Prince? Everyone then looked behind them. It was a handsome and somewhat familiar face. Chu Ning is here too? Someone exclaimed in surprise. A few years ago, Chu Ning was quite famous in the imperial capital. However, ever since he was injured and crippled, he almost never appeared in front of the public again. His sudden appearance today made everyone remember that there was such a person. He is Chu Liuyue's father. Of course he has to come today. I'm afraid he has to apologize, some people secretly guessed. All kinds of gazes fell on Chu Ning, but his expression was calm, as if he didn't notice the crowd sizing him up. Beside him, there was a young girl. She looked to be no more than 13 or 14 years old. She was dressed in red and had a slender figure, but her back was straight. With just a glance, everyone was already certain that this young girl was Chu Liyue. Almost everyone's gaze fell on her. Born a good-for-nothing, she had no sense of existence for many years, but she sold the hunting ground without permission, causing the Crown Prince to lose face. How could everyone not be curious about her? The hall became quieter and quieter, and the air seemed to have frozen. The lanterns were bright and reflected the light. She took a step forward, and the bright light fell on her face. Everyone's eyes flashed with a trace of amazement. A small, pale face was reflected in everyone's eyes. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains, her nose was delicate, and her lips were red without any makeup. It was an extremely beautiful face. The most eye-catching thing was that pair of obsidian black eyes, which were bright and clear. They were clear, clean, and unperturbed. Just one look seemed to make people unconsciously sink into them. Her eyebrows were still a little immature. It was not hard to imagine how beautiful she would become in a few years' time. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became a little strange. Nobody expected that the good-for-nothing Chu family would have such a face that people could not look away from. Chu Xianmin noticed this and was furious. Her hands and her sleeves clenched into fists, and her meticulously manicured nails dug into her palms painfully. In the past month, Chu Liyue seemed to have seen something. Not only did her temperament change, but she also looked completely different. Her face, which originally had a bad complexion and yellowish skin, had inexplicably become white and supple. The timidity in her eyes was gone, and it was replaced by an indescribable calmness. Her facial features did not change much, but she looked much prettier than before. Before she came, she was a little worried that Chu Liyue would steal the limelight, and it turned out to be the case. Lu Yao saw that his daughter's expression was a little off and immediately pulled her without batting an eyelid. So what if Chu Liyue became prettier? A good-for-nothing has no right to be the crown princess. Chu Xianmin took a deep breath and suppressed the jealousy in her heart. I must get rid of her today. The crowd only regained their senses when the Chu family took their seats and began to exchange pleasantries. The hall regained its liveliness from before. Everyone seemed to be having a good time. Their focus was naturally Chu Liyue. I didn't expect that good-for-nothing from the Chu family to be so beautiful. Why haven't I heard of her before? Oh, don't tell me, you have feelings for her, huh? The crown prince won't really marry her. So what if we think about it? After all, beauties are hard to come by. Some of the young aristocrats roared with laughter. Chu Ning's face was cold. He was about to stand up, but Chu Liyue gently pressed his hand down. He turned around and saw her shaking her head. Today's highlight was Rong Jin. As for these people, she really did not need to worry about them. Chu Ning saw that she looked calm and did not insist. He knew that his daughter was different from the past, and she must have her own ideas. Chu Ning did not realize that he had unknowingly begun to treat Chu Luiwei as his backbone. The crown prince has arrived. With this announcement, the hall fell silent again. Chu Luiwei looked over and saw a reddish-purple figure appear in front of her. It was a face that could be considered handsome, but his eyes were a little sinister, which made people feel disgusted just by looking at him. She squinted her eyes. The crown prince, Rong Jin. The other party seemed to have noticed her gaze and quickly looked over. The two of them looked at each other. Shock flashed across Rong Jin's eyes. He had never seen such a beautiful girl before. Even Chu Xianmin looked much duller in comparison. But the next moment, he noticed that the girl was sitting in the Chu family seat. He immediately understood. Chapter 25. The romantic thoughts in Rong Jin's heart instantly vanished. She was the one who ruined his reputation for years because of her useless body. She even sold the hunting ground on her own accord, causing him to lose face in front of the imperial city's aristocratic families. If he didn't get back at her tenfold, his position as the crown prince would be wasted. Rong Jin forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and walked forward. The crowd was shocked to find that he was actually walking toward Chu Luiwei. He walked to the front and looked down at Chu Luiwei with a calm expression. However, everyone could feel the turbulent waves hidden under the seemingly calm surface. Countless pairs of eyes stared at the two of them. First Elder and the others immediately stood up and bowed. "Greetings, Your Highness." Rong Jin ignored them and looked at Chu Luiwei as he enunciated each word clearly. "You're Chu Luiwei?" Chu Luiwei met his gaze and said frankly, "Yes." Rong Jin slowly clenched his fists in his sleeves. He originally thought that Chu Luiwei would panic, but the girl in front of him looked calm and didn't show any signs of uneasiness. Where did she get her confidence from? "You're young but you're quite bold. I thought you wouldn't dare to come today." Chu Luiwei blinked. "Why wouldn't I dare to come? Didn't you send someone to the Chu family to tell me that I had to come?" Rong Jin choked and then sneered. "You're indeed sharp-tongued." Chu Luiwei smiled and responded. "Thank you for your compliment, Your Highness." Rong Jin looked at her deeply and turned to walk back to his seat. First Elder turned back and looked at her with disgust. "You don't know, First Elder, if you want to embarrass yourself in this kind of situation, you can scold me," said Chu Luiwei nonchalantly before she sat down peacefully. The First Elder suddenly realized that this was not the Chu clan, but the Ming Chui Palace. Everyone was waiting to see them make a fool of themselves. If they were to make a scene at this time, it would be too ugly. After feeling sullen for a while, the First Elder finally swung his sleeve and swallowed his words. The Crown Prince was obviously filled with hatred for Chu Luiwei. He would definitely make things difficult for him later. At that time, all he had to do was kick Chu Luiwei out in time. The hall quickly regained its liveliness, but there were still many people who were secretly sizing up Chu Luiwei. She didn't seem to care as she sat peacefully in her seat, but in reality, she had already quickly observed those people. In addition to the seats of His Majesty and the Empress in the middle, the hall was divided into two parts. The people sitting at the very front were the noble princes and princesses. Previously, she had inquired that the current emperor had 9 princes and 3 princesses. Among them, 3 princes and 1 princess had died young. As a result, only 6 princes and 2 princesses were still alive. Opposite the crown prince sat a man dressed in black. He looked like he was about the same age as the 3rd prince, but his facial features were resolute and handsome, and his aura was completely different. He had a murderous aura around him. It was a feeling that could only be honed on the battlefield. This was the 3rd prince, Rong Jiao. He entered the Northwest Army at 15 and was considered a young general. He had a high reputation in the army. It was also because of this that his birth mother could go against the crown prince even though she was just a noble. The court had long been secretly divided into 2 factions. Even though the crown prince had the upper hand, Rongjio couldn't be underestimated. Beside Rongjin was naturally Prince Ping, the fifth prince, Rongqi. He was also one of the two princes with a title other than the crown prince. Eighth princess, Rongshu, and ninth prince, Rongfeng, sat beside Rongjio. However, there were still a few empty seats. Further back were the Si, Gu, Chu, and Lu family clans. The Chu family was behind the Gu family, and the Lu family was behind the Si family. Among the four big families, the Si family was the strongest, and the Chu family was the weakest. Originally, the Chu family was ahead of the Lu family. However, they gradually declined over the years, and the Lu family relied on their wealth to overtake them and sit firmly in third place. Not long after Rongjin sat down, laughter was heard from outside the palace. At the same time, a stern announcement was heard. His Majesty is here. Her Majesty is here. They're here. The crowd hurriedly stood up and bowed in that direction. Long live His Majesty. Chu Luiyue also followed the crowd. Everyone please rise. Today is the Crown Prince's birthday banquet, so there's no need to stand on ceremony. A middle-aged man's deep laughter was heard. Oh, Izhenjin, quickly go and find your brother. The crowd then saw the fourth princess, Rongzhen, behind the empress. Rongzhen was also the current empress's child and was a true princess. She looked to be around 16 or 17 years old, and her luxurious palace gown made her look even more beautiful. Then, father, did you agree to my request? Emperor Jiawen smiled dotingly. Of course. You're the most mischievous. Look at the others. Which one of them is as noisy as you? If I don't agree to your request, I'm afraid you'll turn the world upside down today. Rongzhen wrinkled her nose, but she still had a doting smile on her face as she happily walked to Rongjin's side and sat down. Even a fool could tell how much Emperor Jiawen doted on her. After the empress sat down, the crowd also sat down. Chu Luiyue quickly looked up. Emperor Jiawen, Rong Xiao. The last time she saw him was during the imperial court meeting. The imperial court meeting was held once every 3 years, and all the affiliated countries of the Tianling dynasty would come to have an audience with the emperor. With Rong Xiao's status, he could only stand at the very back and didn't even have the right to talk to her. However, she had a photographic memory, and she was already preparing to take over her father's position back then. Hence, she very carefully remembered everyone's appearance and their relationship with each other. Compared to back then, Rong Xiao seemed to have aged a little, and his expression and aura were very different. Yes, back then, he was lowly and could only stand among the crowd and look up at her from afar. But now, their positions had been completely flipped. However, she only took one look and quickly retracted her gaze. Emperor Jiawen felt a strange gaze landing on him, but he didn't find anything strange when he wanted to look. Rongzhen just sat down and saw Rongjin's gloomy face. She suddenly thought of something and looked toward the Chu family. As Chu Luiyue's seat was in the second row, she only saw a slender figure. Is that her? She leaned closer to Rongjin and asked softly. Rongjin grunted in response. What kind of thing is she? Brother, don't worry. I'll help you vent your anger. Rongjin's brows twitched, but he didn't say anything to stop her. This was a silent agreement. Rongzhen was arrogant and didn't usually do things logically. However, father and mother doted on her a lot, so they wouldn't do anything even if she caused trouble. As the crown prince, it was really embarrassing for him to get into a fight with a girl over a hunting ground. It was best if Rongzhen stepped in. As they spoke, Rongzhen had already spoken. I think this must be the famous Big Missy of the Chu family, right? Everyone quietened down and immediately realized that Rongzhen was going to find trouble with Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue looked up. Rongzhen smiled evilly and said, I've been in the Chu family for a long time. All these years, this princess hasn't seen you much. I feel like we've known each other for a long time, so I plan to give Big Missy Chu a gift. As she spoke, she clapped her hands. Chapter 26. A huge cage was moved over. It was covered with a black cloth, so no one could guess what was inside. Chu Luiyue smelled a faint fishy smell and narrowed her eyes. Rong Zhen went forward and pulled off the black cloth. Shua! A gigantic golden python was coiled up in the middle of it. Its body was as thick as a person's thigh, and it had layers of pale golden scales that glowed coldly. Its blood-red vertical pupils were like two sharp daggers, cruel and indifferent. It was a third-grade fiend, a golden python. When it suddenly saw the light, it suddenly became vigilant. It raised its huge python head and spat out its tongue. It made a hissing sound that made one's hair stand on end. The people in the main hall were all shocked when they saw this huge creature. Emperor Jianghu, who was sitting on top, was also very surprised. He then followed Rong Zhen's line of sight. An unfamiliar girl's face appeared in front of him. His heart skipped a beat. He knew that this was the Chu family's eldest Missy, Chu Ning's daughter, Chu Luiyue, who was engaged to Rong Jin. Zhen, what are you doing? Asked Emperor Jianghu. This is your brother's birthday banquet. It's not a place for you to fool around. He remembered that Chu Luiyue was born with a damaged yuan meridian, so she would never be able to cultivate. How could she deal with a third-grade golden python? He didn't care about Chu Luiyue, but she was engaged to Rong Jin. It would be difficult to resolve the situation if things turned ugly. Besides, there were so many people watching. If he indulged Rong Zhen, the crowd might think that the royal family was heartless and neglected Chu Luiyue because she was a good-for-nothing. However, Rong Zhen smiled. Father, this is the first time I met eldest Missy Chu. I like her, so I wanted to give her this golden python that I obtained with much difficulty. This was personally hunted by his daughter. I wanted to keep it as a pet, but since it's fated to be with eldest Missy Chu, I'm willing to part with it. She then looked at Chu Luiyue. I guess eldest Missy Chu hasn't contracted a fiend yet, right? A few snickers came from the crowd. What kind of magical beast could a good-for-nothing contract? Many people looked at Chu Luiyue with mocking eyes, as if they were waiting for a good show. Rong Zhen pulled a long face, seemingly unhappy. What's wrong? Could it be that first Miss Chu doesn't like the golden python that this princess gave her? She was the most favored princess of the imperial court. Who dared to say that they didn't like her gifts? Chu Luiyue stood up. Lu Yu is very grateful for fourth princess's kindness. How could he not appreciate it? Rong Zhen then smiled again and gestured at Chu Luiyue as if summoning a lowly servant. Since you are so grateful to this princess, why don't you come and accept this gift? Chu Luiyue paused for a moment, then walked forward. She first bowed to Emperor Jianghu before looking at Rong Zhen and bowing again. Every movement was very standard, even better than the etiquette of the instructors and nannies in the palace. This series of movements was done so smoothly that it was pleasing to the eye. Most importantly, she seemed to exude a sense of nobility from her bones. This aura was even more outstanding than that of the real princess, Rong Zhen, who was standing beside her. Even though she was wearing old clothes with frayed edges and had no makeup on her pale face, she was more eye-catching than Rong Zhen, who was dressed in a gorgeous palace gown. She was like a bright pearl that would attract everyone's attention no matter where she was. Some people couldn't help but start whispering. Didn't they say that Chu Luiyue was born a good-for-nothing and was thrown into the pile of servants from a young age? Why is she so well-mannered? This is a little strange. The Chu family doesn't even care about her. Why would they teach her all this? Did they teach her before she entered the palace? The person who said this gradually lowered his voice. They were all from aristocratic families, so they knew that these rules couldn't be learned in a day. That noble and elegant aura couldn't be cultivated overnight. How is this possible? Even Chu Xianmin doesn't have such a calm and noble aura, right? Not to mention Chu Xianmin, even the fourth princess. Was she defeated? No one dared to say this out loud, but they knew that everyone was thinking the same thing when they looked at each other. Rong Zhen naturally noticed this as well, and she couldn't help but be enraged. What is this Chu Luiyue pretending to be? She didn't believe that a good-for-nothing would be able to stir up any waves. Big Chu Missy, although this golden python is for you, there's a condition. Rong Zhen's red lips curled up as she pointed at the golden python. This golden python was just caught, and it's wild and untamed. If you want to be its master, you have to defeat it. So, why don't you fight it? The air froze. No one expected Rongjun to make such a request. Chu Luiwei was a good-for-nothing. Fighting a third-grade golden python was a dead end. Without waiting for Chu Luiwei to speak, Emperor Zhouwen frowned. Zhen, don't mess around. The smile on Rongjun's face slowly disappeared. She said coldly, Father, I'm not messing around. There's a reason for me to do this. Do you know that she secretly sold Brother Crown Prince's hunting ground? Emperor Zhouwen was stunned. What? Brother Crown Prince put in a lot of effort for that hunting ground, but in the end, it was all for naught. Brother Crown Prince is magnanimous and didn't hold it against her, but as his sister, I can't stand it. This golden python is just a third-grade fiend, and Brother Crown Prince has lost a lot of money. She looked at Chu Luiwei and raised her voice. Do you admit to this or not? Emperor Zhouwen then remembered that he did give Chu Luiwei a hunting ground back then. She actually sold it? No matter what, that was something he personally gave her. How could she sell it so casually? This made Emperor Zhouwen unhappy with Chu Luiwei. However, if he really agreed to Rongjun's suggestion, it would be a problem whether Chu Luiwei could survive today. Your Majesty, I'd rather atone for my daughter's sins. At this moment, Chu Ning suddenly stepped forward and knelt down on one knee. Emperor Zhouwen's expression softened when he saw him. After thinking for a moment, he finally nodded. That's fine. Even though Chu Ning wasn't the same as before, it shouldn't be too dangerous to deal with a third-grade golden python. He was also Chu Luiwei's father, so it was most appropriate for him to step forward. On the one hand, it would save the crown prince and the royal family's face, and on the other hand, it wouldn't really hurt the father and daughter's lives. At this moment, Chu Luiwei suddenly stepped forward. I'm willing to try. Rongjun was angry that she lost a chance to teach Chu Luiwei a lesson, but she didn't expect her to take the initiative to step forward. What did you say? Say it again. Chu Luiwei raised her chin, and her pure black eyes sparkled as if they were filled with stars. Chapter 27. Everyone's jaws dropped in shock. What did she say? She actually dared to fight the golden python? This isn't just gutsy, she's crazy. Not to mention her, even a stage 3 warrior might not be able to subdue a third-grade golden python single-handedly. She really doesn't want her life. Chu Ning was also shocked and hurriedly pulled Chu Luiwei's sleeve. This golden python is ferocious, and it's more powerful than a typical third-grade fiend. Chu Luiwei smiled and glanced at him. Father, don't worry. Just 4 words miraculously calmed Chu Ning's uneasy and worried heart. She seemed to have a magical power that could make others unknowingly believe her words. If she said don't worry, then nothing would happen. Chu Ning's lips moved. He had already guessed that his daughter's Yuan meridian had been repaired, and she might have even started cultivating. However, how could she be a match for a third-grade fiend in such a short time? After repeatedly struggling in his heart, Chu Ning finally swallowed his words and nodded solemnly. Father believes you. Chu Luiwei's heart warmed. This feeling of being unconditionally trusted was the most reassuring. Rongjun naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity and immediately raised her voice. You agreed to this yourself. No matter what the outcome is, it has nothing to do with me. Chu Luiwei mocked her in his heart. This kind of shameless behavior in public was indeed not something an ordinary person could do. Emperor Zhouwen hesitated for a moment and exchanged glances with the Empress. The Empress shook her head lightly and said in an extremely soft voice, Your Majesty, this matter concerns the royal family's reputation after all. Can't you just teach her a lesson publicly and order someone to protect her? Emperor Zhouwen deeply agreed and specially sent a few guards by the side to immediately save Chu Luiwei once they discovered that something was wrong. Even so, the crowd still didn't think highly of it. Chu Luiwei was simply courting death. Rongjun smiled delightedly and turned to return to her seat, but she was stopped by Chu Luiwei. Fourth princess, please wait. Rongjun turned around impatiently. Anything else? Luwei is very touched that the fourth princess gave me such a big gift, so I've prepared a gift in return for you later. Please kindly accept it, fourth princess. Rongjun sneered. You're just fine, You just have to deliver it to me later. What kind of good things could a good-for-nothing from a fallen aristocratic family give out? How laughable! She walked to Rong Jin's side and proudly blinked her eyes. Rong Jin's lips curved up slightly, and he gave her an affirmative look before quickly hiding his expression. Only Chu Luiyue and the golden python trapped in the huge black cage were left in the center of the hall. Chu Luiyue slowly walked in front of the golden python. One man and one beast, facing each other. You overestimate yourself. Chu Xianmin felt relieved when she saw this scene. She didn't need to do anything. There were plenty of people who could take care of Chu Luiyue. Everyone unconsciously quieted down. The golden python had a ferocious temperament. In addition, Rong Jin didn't really rely on her own strength to subdue it. Instead, she used a group attack to capture it. In addition, Rong Jin had deliberately starved it for the past few days. This golden python was already on the verge of exploding. It was even more dangerous than an ordinary golden python. Rong Jin originally only wanted to teach this golden python a lesson and tease it. However, she happened to hear about what happened at Rong Jin's place today. Knowing that Chu Luiyue would most likely come tonight, she specially ordered someone to bring it over. She wanted to teach Chu Luiyue a lesson. Chu Luiyue took one look and already guessed that the other party was purposely messing with him. The golden python felt Chu Luiyue's aura and became even more agitated. Its eyes were filled with hostility. Chu Luiyue cupped his hands at the guard beside him. Please lend me a sword. The guard was stunned and instinctively looked at Emperor Jiuwen. Emperor Jiawen nodded. Just give it to her. Only then did the guard remove the sword from his waist and pass it to Chu Luiyue. Thank you. Chu Luiyue took the sword and quickly brandished it. The blade was too heavy and not sharp enough. The material wasn't good enough either. However, it was enough. It seems like he has some skills, he's just putting on a show. His Yuan meridian is incomplete, and he can't even absorb force. What can he do? That's true. He probably wants a sword to give himself some courage. Chu Luiyue ignored them and took half a step back. He held the sword tightly with both hands and raised it high. Then he harshly slashed it down. Clang. In the blink of an eye, the chains on the cage broke with a loud sound. Everyone was stunned. What is he trying to do? Before they could figure it out, Chu Luiyue had already lifted the sword, and the cage's door instantly opened. The golden python realized that the cage that locked it up had opened, and it immediately rushed out. Its huge head rushed toward Chu Luiyue without hesitation. It opened its mouth and revealed its sharp fangs. Once bitten, even if one didn't die, they would be injured. Its body was huge, and in comparison, Chu Luiyue looked especially thin and weak. It was as if the golden python would swallow her whole. At this moment, Chu Luiyue didn't retreat. Instead, he stepped forward and used the momentum to jump forward. At the same time, he quickly stabbed his sword. It went straight for the golden python's abdomen. The scales on its body were very hard, and it was difficult to pierce through them with normal swords. Only its abdomen, which was slightly softer, could be used as a breakthrough point. The golden python also noticed Chu Luiyue's intention. It immediately swung its tail and harshly slapped Chu Luiyue. Its physical strength was very strong. If this hit landed, Chu Luiyue would probably die on the spot. However, Chu Luiyue's feet moved quickly, and for some reason he narrowly avoided the attack. He circled to the golden python's side. She didn't hesitate to stab at its body. The long sword slashed across the hard scales, making an ear-piercing sound. However, it only left a faint white scratch on the surface. There wasn't even a trace of blood. Rong Jin sneered. Brother, this Chu Luiyue is really stupid. He actually thinks that he can, what? Before she could finish her mocking words, she saw the situation change. Chu Luiyue's attack completely angered the golden python. It crazily swung its tail, trying to entangle Chu Luiyue. However, Chu Luiyue suddenly let go of the sword hilt and jumped onto its body. With the help of this rebound, Chu Luiyue actually rushed directly onto the golden python's head. She held the golden python's neck with one hand, and with the other, She quickly took off the only hairpin on her head and ruthlessly stabbed it into the golden python's eyes. Its greatest weakness was its eyes. Splat. Blood splattered everywhere. The golden python let out a painful and angry hiss. However, Chu Luiwei didn't hesitate and directly plucked out its eyeball. The golden python violently shook its body, but it couldn't do anything to Chu Luiwei. In the blink of an eye, the second eyeball was also plucked out. The golden python's body gradually went limp. Only then did Chu Luiwei jump down, pick up the sword on the ground, and directly stab it into the bloody hole. A ruthless slash. The entire golden python was cut open and killed by her just like that. Ah! This bloody scene caused some of the delicate noblewomen to scream. However, Chu Luiwei's expression didn't change. She directly reached her hand into the hole and pulled out a green pearl. It was the golden python's pearl of essence. Then, Chu Luiwei walked towards the frozen Rongjin, extended her bloody hand, and handed over the pearl of essence. Chapter 28. Rongjin raised her head stiffly and looked at Chu Luiwei. Her face and hands were covered in blood, but her expression was calm and composed. The golden python's corpse was right behind her, but she could still smile. It was as if she was a demon from hell. Rongjin suddenly shuddered. At this moment, she suddenly had a thought. This Chu Luiwei is not as easy to bully as she seems. Chu Luiwei extended her hand. Fourth princess, the golden python's pearl of essence is good for nourishing the body. The pearl of essence was still covered in sticky red blood, and the sweet, fishy smell was almost nauseating. Rongjin's face was pale, but she had to accept Chu Luiwei's gift in front of so many people. Just as she was in a dilemma, Rongjin suddenly spoke. Men, take good care of first Miss Chu's gift. As soon as he finished speaking, the guard at the side immediately stepped forward, intending to take the pill of essence. However, Chu Luiwei avoided the guard's hand and stared at Rongjin stubbornly. I originally thought that since my name was written on the title deed, it was mine and I could do whatever I wanted with it. However, I didn't expect the fourth princess to fly into a rage. Take this as my apology to your Majesty and His Highness the Crown Prince. Unfortunately, the fourth princess doesn't seem to like this gift. Or do you think it's not enough? Rongjin's heart skipped a beat. Although she was willful and spoiled, she was no fool. Chu Luiwei wanted her to accept it personally. If she didn't accept it, she would look very mean when she pressured Chu Luiwei earlier. There were so many people watching in the main hall, especially Imperial Father and Imperial Mother. It was fine if she damaged her reputation since she had always been like this. However, she couldn't afford to be criticized for implicating the royal family. She was able to please the Emperor and Empress largely because she knew her limits even though she often fooled around. Of course, I'm satisfied. Rongjin gritted her teeth and stood up. She asked the guard to step back and personally picked up the pearl of essence. It was so sticky and disgusting that she almost threw it away. She originally thought that she would be able to teach this Chu Luiwei a lesson, but who would have thought that she would end up being checkmated instead? She stared at Chu Luiwei with a deadly gaze and gritted her teeth. Flo. You, very well. This princess will remember you. Chu Luiwei smiled faintly and bowed. Thank you for your concern, princess. Rongjin's anger was stuck in her chest, and it was about to explode. Enough. Rongjin reminded her, and Rongjin could only suppress her anger. Rongjin glanced at her unhappily. Why aren't you going to clean it up? It's so dirty, what do you think it looks like? As soon as he finished speaking, everyone in the hall fell silent for a moment. The crown prince seemed to be talking about the fourth princess, but he was actually mocking Chu Luiwei. The fourth princess's hands were only stained with a little blood, but Chu Luiwei had just fought with the golden python, and now his hands were almost completely covered in blood. Wasn't this filthy, referring to her? Whispered laughter came from all over the hall. Everyone's gazes fell on her with mockery and ridicule. In this brightly lit Ming Chui palace, everyone was bright and beautiful, clean and luxurious. She was the only one covered in blood. Because she had pulled out the hairpin, Her hair was a little messy and scattered. She looked so disheveled. This was the scene that Rong Xiu saw when he came in. A thin girl was standing in the middle of the hall. Beside her was a huge, damaged black cage and the mangled corpse of a golden python. The ground was covered in blood. The side of her face and hands were covered in scarlet blood. Her body was thin, but her back was straight like a pine tree on a cliff. No matter how strong the wind was, it would not bend. His gentle and clear eyes instantly turned dark and cold. But it was only for a moment before he regained his usual gentle expression. Prince Li has arrived. This voice broke the atmosphere in the hall. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. Prince Li? The seventh prince? Why did he come? He had been staying in the Prince Li's residence with the excuse of being sick for a month after returning to the imperial capital. He had never attended any banquets. How come today? Chu Liyue's heart jumped and he unconsciously looked back. A somewhat familiar figure appeared at the door of the hall. The octagonal glass palace lanterns hanging outside the door sprinkled a soft and warm light, reflecting his tall and slender figure. Chu Liyue was stunned. It was midsummer, but he was still wearing the white fox cloak. He walked into the hall, and his face gradually became clear. Although it was not the first time that Chu Liyue saw this face, he still could not help but be dazzled. His sword-like eyebrows slanted to his temples, his nose was high, and his phoenix eyes were deep. The lights were bright, but they were not as dazzling as the thousands of stars in his eyes. It seemed that with just one look, people would be willing to fall in love with him. Under the cloak, he was wearing a snow-white brocade robe with golden patterns embroidered on the cuffs and hem. As he walked, he looked like flowing moonlight. When he appeared, a sentence flashed in everyone's mind. There was a bandit gentleman who was like cutting, practicing, and polishing. He was really elegant, noble, and as gentle as jade. Some noble ladies blushed and stared at Rong Xiu with sparkling eyes. So this is Prince Li? I didn't expect him to be so good-looking. The last time he came back to the imperial capital was 3 years ago. I didn't expect him to be so handsome when he came back. I'm afraid no one in the imperial capital can compare with him. Humph, he's just a sick man. What's there to look at? At most, he's just an idle prince. Everyone in the hall whispered. Chu Liyue looked more carefully and raised his eyebrows slightly. It was no wonder that those people said so. Rong Xiu's lips were a little pale, and he did look a little weak. At this moment, Rong Xiu suddenly turned his eyes to her. Their eyes met. Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes. The next moment, Rong Xiu walked directly to her and stopped in front of her. Everyone looked at her strangely. Chu Liyue was stunned. What was he going to do? Was he going to settle accounts with her because she broke into the Jade Wave Lake last time? Just as she was thinking about this, Rong Xiu suddenly reached out and handed her a snow-white handkerchief. Chu Liyue suddenly understood what he meant. He was asking her to wipe the blood on her face. The scene when they first met suddenly appeared in her mind. He reached out and gently wiped the blood on her face with his fingers. He said, "Miss Chu, you can't go back in such a sorry state with blood on your face." The situation this time was so similar. Chu Liyue took the handkerchief and bowed. "Thank you, Prince Li." Chapter 29. Everyone had different expressions. His Highness Prince Li is. Rong Xiu had already looked at Emperor Jianghu and bowed. "Please forgive me for being late, father." Then he couldn't help but cough twice, looking like he had been sick for a long time. Emperor Jianghu shook his head as if he didn't agree. "Your body has been weak since you were young. Now that you've just returned to the imperial city, you should take care of yourself. Why force yourself to come?" Rong Xiu smiled and glanced at Rong Jin. "How can I not come to my brother's birthday banquet?" Rong Jin scoffed in his heart, but he still smiled. "Seventh brother, you're too polite. It's just a birthday banquet today. It's my fault if it affects your body. Quick, sit down." Rong Xiu readily accepted the advice and sat down beside the third prince. Then he took off the cloak on his body and coughed a few times. It seemed like this torment had already made him very uncomfortable. The crowd looked at each other. This Prince Li really doesn't seem to be in good health. Some of the noble ladies looked disappointed. No matter how good-looking he is, he doesn't have much of a future with such a weak body. It's a pity that his face and aura are wasted. However, Rong Xiu didn't seem to care about all this. After sitting down, he greeted the few people beside him and quietened down. He looked like a gentle and modest gentleman. Rongzhen didn't have much of an impression of her seventh brother, but when she saw him hand Chu Luiyue a handkerchief, she was instantly disgusted with him. She chuckled as her gaze moved between Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue. Seventh brother, you seem to take care of Big Chu Missy a lot. Could it be that you guys already know each other? Rong Xiu smiled lightly. I've only returned to the imperial city for less than a month, and it's my first time out today. How can I know anyone else? Rongzhen was still suspicious. Then, why are you helping her? Rong Xiu paused for a moment, and his smile faded. I just feel that it's not good to see blood today at my brother's birthday banquet. I came late. I don't know what happened earlier. Why did this place become like this? He poured himself a cup of tea and asked casually, if I remember correctly, first Miss Chu seems to be engaged? Who dares to treat the future crown princess like this at the crown prince's birthday banquet? Rongzhen choked. Rongjin's face instantly turned even uglier. Weren't these words accusing him of allowing others to bully Chu Luiyue? Seeing that the situation was not right, the Empress immediately said warmly, Prince Li, you misunderstood. Rongzhen felt like they were old friends at first sight, so she decided to give the golden python to her. I was just taming this golden python. Rong Xiu seemed a little surprised. Tame the golden python? Wasn't first Miss Chu born with a damaged yuan meridian and unable to cultivate? Then how can you tame the golden python? His seemingly puzzled question made the Empress and the others extremely embarrassed. Rong Jin frowned. He felt that Rong Xiu was purposely putting him on the spot. However, looking at his stunned expression, it seemed that he really did ask this question subconsciously. Besides, Rong Xiu probably didn't know about the hunting ground. For a moment, Rong Jin couldn't tell what he was thinking, so he didn't respond. Rong Zhen couldn't help but argue. She was the one who made a mistake first. She sold the title deed to Brother Crown Prince's hunting ground to someone else. Such behavior is too much. Rong Xiu kept quiet for a while and rubbed the teacup. He rubbed his teacup and asked, since it's the Crown Prince's title deed, how could she sell it? There was dead silence in the main hall. Of course, everyone knew that Chu Luiyue's name was on the title deed. However, as long as she had a brain, she should know that the Crown Prince valued this hunting ground very much. She sold it and made the Crown Prince pay a huge sum of money. The Crown Prince was furious. It was obvious that he wanted to deal with her today. Otherwise, how could a good-for-nothing from the Chu family be qualified to attend such a palace banquet? Everyone was well aware of this, and even the Empress had tacitly agreed. However, for someone of Prince Li's status to say it out loud, it made the Crown Prince look especially ugly. Chu Luiyue used the white handkerchief to slowly wipe the blood off her hands and curved her lips. Since he wanted to help her, she wouldn't let go of this opportunity. Your Highness, you don't know. Even though this title deed is in my name, the Crown Prince and I aren't officially engaged yet. It's indeed my fault for selling the title deed like this. However, the fourth princess has already promised that as long as I tame this golden python, this matter will be written off. Fourth princess, right? Rongzhen widened her eyes. When did I say that? Don't make irresponsible remarks. Chu Luiyue looked at Emperor Jiawen in confusion. Your Majesty, isn't that what you meant? Emperor Jiawen didn't expect Chu Luiyue to be so direct and was instantly embarrassed. He coughed and waved his hand. It's just a hunting ground. Since Lu Yu has already tamed the golden python according to the agreement, let's just forget about it. Zhen, don't mention it again in the future. This wasn't just a warning to Rongzhen, it was also a warning to everyone present. Rongzhen was angry, but she could only agree reluctantly when she saw Emperor Jiawen's serious gaze. Thank you, Your Majesty. However, Chu Luiyue didn't intend to let it go just like that. She sighed softly and showed a forbearing expression. Your Majesty, Lu Yu knows that you personally bestowed this title deed back then, so he naturally treasures it. If he wasn't forced into a corner, Lu Yu would never sell this title deed. Emperor Zhou was stunned. Why? Is there something else going on? Chu Luiyue took a deep breath. Your Majesty, you don't know. Because I was born with a damaged essence meridian, and my father was seriously injured a few years ago, we didn't have a good life. Helpless, we could only sell the title deed to raise some money to maintain our lives. Chu Luiyue, what nonsense are you talking about? First Elder immediately stood up and hollered angrily. Was she trying to drag the entire Chu clan into this? Emperor Zhou glanced at First Elder unhappily. Let her speak. First Elder was angry, but he didn't dare to casually interrupt. My father and I once asked the Crown Prince for help, but we couldn't even see him. Before selling the title deed, I wanted to discuss it with the Crown Prince, but I was rejected at the door. So, Rong Jin's face turned pale. This Chu Luiyue really knows how to make things up. Lu Yu really had no choice but to do this. Your Majesty, please understand. Chu Luiyue's words were half true, but the others in the hall were inclined to believe her. Almost everyone in the imperial city knew a little about the kind of life Chu Luiyue and her father were living. It was even more likely that the Crown Prince had refused to let her in. The Crown Prince hated her to the core, so wasn't it normal for him to do this? Looking at it this way, Chu Luiyue didn't do anything wrong. Emperor Zhou looked at Rong Jin sternly. Crown Prince, even though you put in a lot of effort into the hunting ground, if it weren't for the fact that you didn't care about Lu Yu for so many years, I think she wouldn't have done this. If I remember correctly, her birthday is 2 days after yours. At that time, your engagement. Rong Jin's heart skipped a beat. Emperor Zhou might very well let me fulfill the engagement with Chu Luiyue to save the royal family's face. This definitely won't do. Thinking of this, Rong Jin suddenly stood up. Father, I have a favor to ask of you. He pointed at Chu Luiyue. Chapter 30. Rong Jin originally planned to use Chu Luiyue's private sale of the hunting ground to make Emperor Zhou hate Chu Luiyue and dissolve their marriage agreement. However, he didn't expect things to turn out like this. Chu Luiyue had his reasons for selling the title deed, and it was the result of him being bullied by the Chu family and himself. There was no way to explain this, so it was a waste of time to dwell on it. Besides, things had already reached a stalemate, and tonight's series of events were detrimental to the royal family's reputation. He knew that his father definitely didn't want to see this. Thus, he had to cut the Gordian knot. He had to directly propose to dissolve the marriage agreement with Chu Luiyue and draw a clear line between them. Even if others would criticize him, it was better than making his father unhappy with him. Emperor Zhou's face darkened, and he didn't say anything. The hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Rong Jin decided to go all the way and continued. Father, I don't have any feelings for the Chu family's big missy. Even if we were to be together according to the marriage agreement, we wouldn't be happy. Why don't we dissolve the marriage agreement? This is a good thing for both of us. Chu Luiyue looked down and hid the contempt in his eyes. This man really doesn't have any sense of responsibility, and he's so cunning. He clearly thinks that I'm a good-for-nothing and isn't worthy of being the crown prince, but he made it sound so righteous. During the many years that the engagement had existed, he had never mentioned the cancellation of the engagement. Instead, he only brought it up now. Chu Luiyue naturally guessed why. He was the crown prince, but Chu Luiyue was born a good-for-nothing. If he had raised this request earlier, he would definitely be mocked for being snobbish. Chu Luiyue's life in the Chu family was very tough, but he didn't care and let things slide. Perhaps he had long felt that Chu Luiyue wouldn't even live to become of marriageable age at 14. If she had died a long time ago, then he would have easily solved a huge problem. However, he didn't expect her to retaliate. Faced with today's situation, he had to bring up the marriage agreement. Emperor Zhou's eyes were half closed, and the crowd could guess his thoughts. Have you thought it through? Said Emperor Zhou after a while. Rong Xiu suddenly advised in a gentle voice. Crown Prince, First Miss Chu is actually quite a nice person. Didn't she just tame the golden python? Although she doesn't have any origin power in her body, it seems that she does have some strength. Rong Jin's face darkened. In fact, he was very shocked when Chu Luiyue killed the golden python, but after careful observation he didn't detect any fluctuations of origin power from Chu Luiyue. She was able to win mainly because she had found the golden python's weakness and attacked it with all her might. However, this kind of trick could only be used once or twice, but not more than once. In the end, strength was the true source of confidence. Could it be that Chu Luiyue could suddenly recover after being missing a Yuan meridian for more than 10 years? Thinking of this, Rong Jin said firmly, "I'm not going to give you a chance. I've thought it through. He was going to inherit the throne in the future. A person like Chu Luiyue would only be a stain on his record. Of course, I'm willing to make up for the harm I've caused first, Miss Chu." As he spoke, Rong Jin looked at Chu Luiyue. "If you have any conditions, feel free to state them. I'll do my best to satisfy them." Is he planning to kick me out and set up a benevolent and righteous monument for himself? How could there be such a good thing in the world? Chu Luiyue lifted her chin, glanced at Rong Jin, and pursed her lips. "Your Highness, actually, I used to admire you." Rong Xiu, who had just raised his teacup, paused. Then, he calmly put down the teacup and glanced at the girl in front of him. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a chill at the back of her head. Rong Jin frowned as he listened. Is Chu Luiyue unwilling to break off the engagement? That's right. No matter how stupid she is, she knows how precious the position of crown princess is. Just a moment ago, she purposely accused me of not caring about her and her father, but now, she's saying that she's always admired me? She's indeed a greedy and insatiable person. The thoughts that Rong Jin had when he saw Chu Luiyue's face completely disappeared. He impatiently interrupted Chu Luiyue. "I said that you can state any conditions you want. You don't have to say anything else." Chu Luiyue's lips were pale, and her eyelashes trembled slightly. Then she smiled bitterly. "Your Highness, don't worry. I know that I'm not good enough for you, so I've never had any delusions. I know that you have someone else in your heart." As she spoke, her gaze seemed to drift toward Chu Xianmin. "I didn't even have the chance to go to your birthday banquets in the past. Third sister treated me well. She described everything vividly to me every time she came back. All these years, I only saw you a few times. There were many things that third sister told me, so I knew a thing or two." She paused and lowered her head. Her voice was calm and light, but it made one's heart ache. "She knows what kind of tea you like to drink, what kind of books you like to read, and what kind of incense to make you sleep better. I don't know anything." Chu Xianmin's heart skipped a beat. That's not right. Why did these words sound so wrong? When the crowd in the hall heard this, they gradually figured it out and looked at Chu Xianmin. How is she telling Chu Luiyue this out of kindness? She's clearly showing off on purpose. She clearly knows that Chu Luiyue and the crown prince are engaged, yet she still says this in front of me. Also, it's fine that she knows what he likes to drink tea and read books, but she even knows about burning incense to sleep. TSK Disket. I thought that this third Missy was talented and gentle. I didn't expect her to be so bold. I was wondering why the crown prince took a fancy to her out of all the noble ladies in the imperial city. It turns out that she has such means. Even if Chu Luiyue is a good-for-nothing, she's still her elder sister. How can she treat her like this? What kind of woman can be with a man who's engaged to her elder sister? She looks quiet and gentle, but who knows what she's like behind the scenes? Chu Xianmin's face flushed red, and a fire seemed to be burning crazily in her chest. Chu Luiyue's words directly ruined her reputation. She stood up without thinking and reprimanded him in a shrill voice. What nonsense are you talking about? I'll tear your mouth apart. This sharp insult clearly landed in everyone's ears. Once she said that, Chu Xianmin knew that something was wrong. Her shrewish attitude would definitely make the empress and the crown prince unhappy with her. She looked at Rong Jin in a panic and saw that his expression had indeed changed from shock to disgust. Chu Xianmin's heart sank harshly. However, Chu Luiyue took a deep breath as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. The Crown Prince and Third Missy are a match made in heaven. I'm willing to back out and cancel my engagement with the Crown Prince. I don't need any compensation. Emperor Jiawen finally spoke. Lu Yu, you're a good child. This matter is the Crown Prince's fault. How about this? I'll give you and your father 100,000 taels of gold. Also, I see that your martial arts are not bad. Why don't I find you a teacher from Tianlu Academy to teach you well? It was the dream of many to be able to receive the guidance of Tianlu Academy's teachers. Chu Luiwei pondered for a moment. Chapter 31. What? Emperor Jiawen thought that he had heard wrongly, so he asked again subconsciously. You want to enter Tianlu Academy? Chu Luiwei nodded. Yes. Tianlu Academy's recruitment period is in January every year, so I hope your Majesty can give me a chance to take the exam. Emperor Jiawen looked at her with a complicated gaze. Chu Luiwei is really strange. If you say that she's stupid, she's very calm from the start and perfectly resolved all the problems she faced. If you say that she's smart, she took the initiative to give up the position of Crown Princess and even said that she wanted to enter Tianlu Academy. She must know that Tianlu Academy is the top academy in country Yaochen, and one must be a top genius to enter. How can I do it when I don't even have a yuan meridian? This isn't difficult. Tianlu Academy's assessment is very difficult. Are you sure you want to go? You have to know that those old men won't go easy on you on account of me. Chu Luiwei smiled slightly. Lu Yu naturally knows this. Lu Yu just wants a chance to take the exam. Emperor Jiawen stared at her and made sure that she wasn't joking before he finally sighed. Since that's the case, I'll fulfill your wish. But it's up to you whether you can get in or not. Chu Luiwei bent her knees and bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty, for granting my wish. Emperor Jiawen waved his hands. Okay, you must be tired today. Go home and rest first. Chu Ning, stay with her and take good care of her. Since the most important matter had been settled, Chu Luiwei didn't intend to stay here any longer, so she left with Chu Ning. The stiff and cold atmosphere in the palace gradually recovered a little when the duo's figures disappeared into the night sky outside the palace. However, so many things had happened tonight, so nobody dared to make a fuss. A good birthday banquet had become depressing and boring. Rong Jin closed his eyes and rubbed his glabella. His engagement with Chu Luiwei had finally been resolved. Logically speaking, it should have been easy, but his heart still felt as if it was being pressed down by a stone, making him feel extremely depressed. Everything had been planned out well, but somehow, it ended up like this. After today, he didn't know what the people in the imperial capital would say about him. This was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that imperial father was probably dissatisfied with him. Chu Xinmin's current mood was even worse than Rong Jin's. She sat in her seat, but her body felt numb. Her mind was blank, and her expression kept changing. Chu Liuyue's words today had completely ruined her reputation. Who would care whether this was true or not? Who would have thought that not only would he not be able to deal with Chu Luiwei today, he would even get himself into trouble? More and more pairs of eyes fell on her. She felt as if there were daggers on her back, and she just wanted to find a hole to hide in. Cough, cough. Rong Xiu coughed again. Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows. Why are you coughing so badly? Rong Xiu waved his hands. I didn't cough, cough. Before he could finish his sentence, he started coughing again, and his lips became even paler. Emperor Jiawen didn't allow him to refuse. Go back and rest now. It wasn't easy for you to recover at Mingyue Tianshan, but you're already like this after coming back for a month. What are you going to do in the future? If you fall sick again, I'll punish the people in your residence. Rong Xiu smiled helplessly and stood up. Yan Qin, who was behind him, immediately covered him with a cloak. I'll take my leave first. Then he looked at Rong Jin. Brother, I've already sent the birthday gift to your residence. I can't accompany you today. I'll apologize another day. Rong Jin forced a smile. Seventh brother, you're too polite. Your health is more important. Rong Xiu then turned around and left. After he left, Rong Jiao also said that he had military matters to settle and left. The originally not harmonious atmosphere became even more awkward and cold because of the departure of one or two people. Before this, who would have thought that the usually glorious crown prince's birthday banquet would end up like this? Rong Xiao walked out of the palace and saw two people standing beside Prince Li Mansion's horse carriage. They were Chu Ning and Chu Luiwei. He raised his brows slightly and walked over. "Officer Chu, Big Chu Missy, why are you here?" However, Chu Ning cupped his fists and bowed seriously. "Thank you for your help, Prince Li. My daughter and I will definitely remember your kindness." Rong Xiao's eyes sparkled. "Officer Chu, you're too polite. I didn't help much today." Chu Ning shook his head. "Other than helping us out today, you also saved my daughter's life the last time. If it weren't for you, we really wouldn't know. If you need anything in the future, please let us know." "The last time? Saved her life?" Rong Xiao glanced at Chu Luiwei and met the girl's warning glare. Her black eyes were bright and dazzling. The corners of his lips curved, and even the corners of his eyes were tinged with a hint of a smile. "Officer Chu, there's no need to be like this. That's nothing. It's not worth mentioning. It's probably because she and this prince hit it off." Chu Luiwei secretly sighed in relief. She had lied to Chu Ning that Rong Xiao had saved her, but she didn't expect him to remember it. Today, Rong Xiao happened to be here, so he decided to wait here and thank him in person. No matter how she tried to persuade him, it was useless. In the end, she could only wait here with him. Fortunately, they didn't have to wait for too long. Moreover, this guy was very cooperative. "It's already late. Why don't this prince send you back?" Chu Luiwei wanted to refuse. "No need." Who knew what he was planning in his heart? There was no free lunch in this world. The more he helped her, the more wary she became. On the surface, this man was as gentle as jade and modest as a gentleman. However, Chu Luiwei didn't think so. She couldn't see through his eyes, nor could she understand his thoughts. Her intuition told her that this was a very dangerous man. It was best to stay as far away from this kind of person as possible. Chu Ning looked at her disapprovingly. "Don't be rude to His Highness Prince Li." Chu Luiwei wrinkled her nose. Chu Ning also felt that this was inappropriate, but before she could say anything, Rong Xiao continued. "In any case, this prince is going back in the same direction, so I can give you a ride. Eldest Miss Chu should be very tired today." Chu Ning's words of refusal were stuck in his throat. He had a life-and-death battle with that golden python, so he was indeed very worried about whether she was injured. After hesitating for a moment, he finally said, "Then I'll have to trouble your Highness Prince Li, please." The carriage of the Prince Li's residence was very spacious and comfortable. It was more than enough for the three of them to sit down. Chu Luiwei sat next to Chu Ning, facing Rong Xiao. Chu Luiwei was very vigilant at first, but Rong Xiao closed his eyes as if he was resting after getting on the carriage. He sat there quietly with those deep eyes that seemed to be able to suck out souls. His jade-like face was tranquil and gentle under the warm light. Chu Luiwei glanced at him and then looked away. They didn't speak for the rest of the journey until they arrived at the Chu estate. Chu Ning was the first to jump off the carriage. Chu Luiwei was about to leave, but she was suddenly pulled back by a hand. It was slightly cold to the touch, and a subtle feeling seemed to spread from her skin to the bottom of her heart. Chu Luiwei was about to make a move when an extremely soft and gentle voice entered her ears. "Remember to return the things to me." Chu Luiwei was stunned. She looked back, but Rong Xiao had already let go of her hand and closed his eyes again, as if nothing had happened. She pursed her lips. "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.